It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Welcome everybody here who are physically here in Tallinn at the Nordic Hotel Forum to the CCIC public seminar. And for those of you who are not fans of acronyms, CCIC stands for Construction Classification International Collaboration. Well, that's quite a mouthful. I was almost late here because it's really snowy here in Tallinn and traffic is terrible, but luckily I managed to make it here just in time. And I hope everybody behind their screens are feeling good about yourselves and are comfortable and ready and excited to hear what we have to say about construction classification and what's it all about. So we have a good program here for you today. You can check the agenda on LinkedIn, and there was the agenda was also on the screen before we started this broadcast. But to kick off the day, I will first talk a little bit about what is CCIC and where we come from and where we go to in the future. And then Jaroslav Nechiba from Czechia will talk a bit more in detail about what the classification system itself is. And then we're going to have presentations from official members of CCIC, from Estonia, from Czechia again, from Poland, from Slovakia. And after that, we're going to have some additional presentations from, for example, Sweden, another presentation from Czechia, and also Lithuanian presentation. And although I did mention that the official members are Estonia, Poland, Slovakia, Czechia, it's actually today I'm very happy to announce that we're going to have our 5th official member, and that's Lithuania. But more on that later. So the whole day is packed up quite nicely. We should be done in 4 hours, I think. At the end, we're going to have a discussion panel with the time we have left over, with the presenters that we have here on site. And yeah, I hope it's going to be an interesting day for you. Yeah, as an introduction, I'm Jan Saar. I'm from Estonia, from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. Is my day job. But I'm also chair of the board of trustees for this organization called Construction Classification International Collaboration. So, but before we delve into the organization itself and what all this classification stuff is about, it's always good to come back and take a look at the question why. And I'm sure many of you have seen Simon Sinek's great TED presentations and maybe read his book about Start With Why. And his principle is that you should always, it's for every organization, it's a layered approach. In the middle of everything should be the question why. After that comes how. And after you've solved the how, then you go to the what. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the why. And Jaroslav is going to handle the more complicated parts with the how and the what after me later on. So yeah, just a quick poll here in the audience. How many of you know Simon Sinek and have seen this video of him presenting? Oh, okay, so not quite the majority I was hoping for, but but at least some of you are familiar with. But Simon is a very good management consultant, organizational consultant. So he has coined a lot of the modern kind of approaches to organizational management that are used by large companies and small. And the emphasis on why is, I think, very good. It is important to step back and to think, because we get involved, especially in terms of this classification world, we get very involved in what we're doing, very into the ontologies, the classification tables, how it's linked, what's the definition, how do you translate it, etc., and how do you apply it in which software. But we often or maybe not that often, think about the question why. Why are we doing this? Why do we need an organization like Construction Classification International Collaboration, CCIC, and what's the purpose of this organization, and why we are working for a common cause? So the why for CCIC, why the organization exists, is because it's a non-profit organization advocating the adoption of a common construction classification system. Well, that's not really a good reason for an organization to exist, just to help adopt something. But this is in order to, first of all, increase international competitiveness, improve cooperation and knowledge sharing, and also enable faster adoption of digital working methods. So this is actually what CCIC is about. Of course, there's the classification system we have at the core of our activities and what we're doing, but the system is only a means to achieve something. And the something we try to achieve is better cooperation across Europe, internationally. We also want to improve knowledge sharing between international parties, but also in every country, between different stakeholders, between different players of the building life cycle. And of course, CCI as a classification system has been built for the digital age, and we also want to help the construction industry, which is not that well known for its digital capabilities compared to other industries, quite low. And we want to help the industry move quicker to a digital working methods. And yeah, that sums it up. I mean, why we need CCIC is because of these reasons. Not just to develop a classification system, which also is part of our activities, but it is really about cooperation and digitization. Now, about the organization itself. For those of you who don't know, we established CCIC already back in 2020 as a non-profit organization. It's set up in Belgium, but that's just because we need to set it up somewhere. But the organization itself is very simple. We don't handle money. We don't have any expenses. We don't have any income, and everything that's within this organization is shared and governed by all the trustees, all the members. So a really kind of collaborative group, and I think it was we copied this management model from actually ICMS, International Cost Measurement Standards group, and Ken Crichton back then, who was helping us establish this management model, he liked to describe it as bring your own beer kind of party. So everybody's, we have fun, we have a party, but nobody's getting free beer. Everybody has to bring their own beer, but it can still be very, very fun and collaborative. And our goal for why we established this legal entity actually was to make sure that the classification system remains free and available to everybody, and that we can develop it collaboratively together. And those were the main reasons. And of course, it helps to have a formal body of some sort that would help to add credibility to what we're doing, because you can never have enough credibility. And it hopefully creates something that is longer lasting than what we maybe as the first founding organizations started. So hopefully it will get the ball rolling and it will keep going. So yeah, I think I covered most of the points here about the legal entity. You can go online, ccikollaboration.org, to find out more, of course. And just shortly about the tables, most of them are based on standards. The ones listed here, 12,006, 81346. and we're of course it's, I would say, an evolution of actually the Danish Kuneco system, the CCS system, and we're working very closely with our Danish friends to develop what was once CCS into a more broader CCI classification system. And the members you see here on the screen, the four I mentioned before, but as I said, Lithuania is joining now the official groups. It's not only a technical committee members, but in addition to the official members, Czechia, Estonia, Poland, Slovakia, and Lithuania, who we're going to sign later on a document to make it official. So it's always nice to have a ceremony of some sort. But as you see, the Nordic countries are very much involved as well. We have Denmark, of course. We have Sweden and Finland with us in the technical committee. They are not, in Sweden, they have basically the same system with slight differences, and they call it co-class. So essentially, Sweden is already using the same classification system as well, but with, a slight twist, a Swedish twist, maybe, to put it that way. But we're going to hear about a little bit about co-class later on as well. Andreas is going to talk to us about how they're using co-class in their activities. And and Finland, of course, I mentioned. Yeah. And about the management model, we have a core classification part, and this core can be adopted and added to by a national classification system. So in this example, we have CCI EE, which stands for Estonia. It's an abbreviation, and we have a CCI Czech version. We have a CCI Danish version, and of course, there's co-class here shown also as kind of part of CCI, but officially, of course, they're not yet our members, but we work very closely with them. And the idea is that we develop the core together, but you have the opportunity to, if there's some specifics in your countries, in your organizations, you can extend it, you can add to it. There are rules, of course, but the idea is if somebody comes up with really something important that should be added to the system, they can bring it back to the CCIC technical committee, and we can then review and see if we can add that to the core so that everybody adopts it. And I would like to make it clear that CCI doesn't solve everything. It is just one classification system. And one classification system will never cover all needs. But as we know from IFC and OpenBIM, that doesn't cover everything as well, especially if you look at, for example, the building permitting process. IFC has a lot of properties, a lot of ways to describe the built environment, the specifications of technical specifications, geometry, etc. But it doesn't have everything that's maybe not, you can't put everything in the model, maybe. So that's why you need something additional, something to explain some aspects of the built environment that are not in IFC standard. So, and there's other standards as well. We have the International Construction Measurement Standards, ICMS, which I mentioned before. We have, in the GIS world, there's City GML that we're using for digital twins in Estonia as well. So it's like we have to find a balance between these, and we have to work together with other organizations as well to figure out how we best complement each other. And this brings me to my last slide, actually, about what we need next or where we're heading. And when I was putting together this slide, I was thinking, maybe have lots and lots of bullet points here and explain a lot, but actually there's not a lot to explain. What we need is industry adoption. We don't need to develop the system that much anymore so that it can be adopted. It is ready to be adopted. It is used in Denmark. It is used, for example. It has been used since CCS for years and years. It is being used also a little bit in Sweden. It's been used in different organizations, even in Norway. New Avea is using CoClass, which is essentially the same classification system. And and in Estonia, we're piloting. In Czechia, they're also working very hard to implement it. But the 4 points I listed here are very vital to the industry adoption. And this is what the technical committee for CCIC and the people here in the room, actually, a lot of them are working for, is to create practical examples, use cases, to show the value, how it works, and to each stakeholder. We also need software tools, because CCIC has been built for machine readability, for machine processing, and it shouldn't be, manual human labor to put all these codes in and to identify them. So we need tools to help us, software tools. The third point, tangible proven benefit from using CCI. This goes hand in hand with the practical use cases and examples, because they have to really show why, what is the benefit we get from this classification system. Because when I talk to the industry experts, when I talk to engineers, contractors, clients, developers, I ask them about CCI, about classification systems. They don't really understand that often why they need it, because somehow they get along without it. But the thing with CCI and the full potential is not when you're using it alone, but when you use it together with others. And often that's, it's difficult to look beyond your own kind of scope or borders that you're operating in. But actually, we have a lot more to win if we all kind of agree on using one classification system. And then we start building on top of that. But to get, and I think the most value comes from solutions that are built on top of that. But to get there, we still need to agree and start using a common system. But tangible proven benefit is what we have to show to the market, to the industry. And what we expect from the industry is, of course, realistic and constructive feedback. And Jaroslav made a very good point here on my slide when we were talking about it. And I had positive feedback from users here. He chalked it down, said, no, we don't need positive. We don't need overly positive feedback, which is very, very correct. We need realistic and constructive feedback. So obviously, we don't want to be patted on the back all the time. Oh, what a nice classification system. Very good. Let's use it. No, we want to hear why it's not good for you, why it's not working for you, and what we need to do to make it better, to build it into something that adds value to you, that you can use, and that will bring benefit in your business and to your clients and to your employees, etc. So yeah, industry adoption is definitely, I think, for 2023 and forward, our number one goal, and we hope to get there rather sooner than later. So yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you very much. We do have a chance to ask questions. I think on Zoom, are there any questions? Nope, not yet. If you have any questions online, just type them in the Zoom chat, and we will take questions if we can. But if anybody in the room has any questions, now's the time to raise your hand, ask a question. I know it's morning, you're still kind of waking up, had a good breakfast and stuff, and kind of settling in. But all right, I don't think there's any questions. I was so clear and precise in my presentation. Thank you. But now I would like to hand it over to Jaroslav. Let me just quickly find your presentation here. Which one was it? Yeah. Yes. Can you please tell me the question? I don't have it here on my computer at the moment.
Can you please talk about interoperability or mapping to other established classification systems to ISO 12006 like Uniclass and Omniclass?
Very good question. Whether or not CCI is mapped to different classification systems. The structure is based on 12006 ISO standard, of course. Most of the content is coming from 81346 ISO standard. We don't have mappings for Uniclass, I think, yet, because it's quite difficult to do. And to better answer that, I would still like to hand over the mic now to Jaroslav, and he will explain more in detail about what the classification system is and what it's good for. So please, Jaroslav, hopefully you can do a better job at answering the question than me.
Thank you. You did a perfect job for introduction our organization. For me, I will start my presentation. I will get to the more detailed answer to that question. Yeah, I have to be. Yeah. I will not must stay behind the table. That's much better for me. So I will get back to more detailed answer later on during the presentation because it's a part of my explanation. Those questions, because Jan perfectly described why, I will try to describe how and what. And I will start much more generally than just talking about the tables and relations and mappings, ontologies, and so on and so on. I will try to, let's say, get out of the bubble of the classification topic. Again, why? We didn't prepare our presentation together, so it's coincidence, but it's a sign of the same way of thinking about things, because we both of us want to be useful, not just doing things because we are doing things. So why we need to digitize, why we need to change our current practices. You see here some of the reasons which pop up in my head. And what is important for me is the last row. We cannot do that with Excel spreadsheets and with emails. There's no way to do that, because that's impossible to organize so much related data with these tools. I don't know how it works in your countries, but in Czech, the Excel is the most used information system, in construction. So it's undoable. So we need to change the way of thinking how to work with the data, and the classification system is the one of the part how we can change these things. And because it's just one of them, I felt that we can repeat what we need as well. So the context around the classification, because classification system as itself will not solve everything, of course. So we need a digital common language. We need the language as the people, as the humans, but the computers needs the common digital language as well, because they need to share, transmit the data from the different systems for the different actors, organizations, and so on and so on. So you know how the construction projects are complicated with the relations between the humans, organizations, and so on. Of course, the data is the same. So it's just the different level or layer of the information, how we are sharing them. So we need to move from the data to the information. So we need to add on some kind of the context to the data to get the information. And after that, we can have the knowledge. And the knowledge is what we really need to be better, to improve our things, and so on. So this is how I feel that we can move from that pyramid And of course, we need the structured data, and we need the machine-readable data. And again, for that, the classification system can really help us to move forward. And of course, we all of us know that the construction industry have the issues with the manpower, with the qualified people, and so on, so on. So we have to find the way how to smartly use the computer automatization, where it is useful. Yeah, the humans are still need to take a very important part of it. But we need to find the useful use cases for the computer automatization. And if we find them, we can get those benefits. And one of the most important benefits for me is that the really trustful data, which are up to date and which are structured well, can really boost the self-confidence for decision making. Yeah, because when you are making decisions based on the proper data, you can be much more self-confident on that. This is the purpose of the CCI, so our classification system. Those definitions are general. This is not specifically for the CCI. It's based on the classification generally, even not just for the construction industry. And I put it here just, again, to think about that if you are aligned with that. So that's why we are doing that, yeah? To grouping things, to put the same things with the same purpose together and understand the same things equally. So it's very important, not just for the humans, you know, how it is complicated. When I will ask what people think that's the acronym BIM is, if I have 5 people, I get 10 answers, yeah. So that's very complicated to think about things equally. And the computers must be precise. There are still zeros or ones, so nothing between that. So that's very important. And how we can use it. Classification system, from my point of view, is a part of something bigger. And what the bigger is, from my point, is the data dictionary. We need, for the common language, we need the data dictionary to be able to join together all the actors which are dealing with the data around the construction to use one common single version of the truth. And that is data dictionary, yeah, in the middle of it. So you can see the red area, and I just put 3 main actors. Of course, the actors are much more of them. And you can see everybody is using the same dictionary, and in that case, they can cooperate and collaborate. And that's the key point from my from my way of thinking and my experience, to be able to share the data. And the classification system is the important part of the data dictionary. That's why I'm describing these things here. And again, what are those parts? What are the other parts of the structured data? I just put here some of them, the main ones. Of course, there can be some of the mirrors as well. What is important for me, you can see in brackets all the numbers of standards. So every component of that is based on the international, European, or even world standards like IFC schema and so on. So we can see that the classification system based on the ISO is just one part of it, but a very important part of it. And you still need to keep in mind that you have to maintain somehow all the things around it, not just be focused on classification system, because that's one of the issues of the construction industry, is that people are always stuck in own bubbles, own silos, and looking just about own things, not just too much looking around. But we need to really really see the whole picture of the structured data. One of the main and one of the best standards from my point is these standards called level of information need, because that principles are moving us from the static, the acronyms LOT and LOI and these types of things, moving to something which is much more equal to real life. It's much more dynamic. And again, it's based on the use cases, the purposes. Why we need the requirements, why we need the data. And the classification system can help us specify smaller amount of the information which can be required. We never want to require everything. We just need to tell the supplier just the part of the information which are really needed, which we really need. And this standard and this principle really describing that. And the classification system help us to define, specify the construction entities, technical system, construction systems, even the spaces, if we are requiring some information around the spaces and so on. So that's very important for us to have the classification system ready to follow up this principle. And it's really doing that. The same thing is about the data templates. The data templates are the core of data dictionaries. You can see here how they are basically organized. Of course, it's described much more in detail in the standards. But what is the role of the CCI in that? CCI we can use to organize the data templates for the Loin principle. That's very important because when we have hundreds and thousands of those data templates, we need to somehow organize them. And if we are able to organize them with the same system which are organized the values and the data inside those information which are required already, that's the benefit, because we are using the same things, and when somebody knows the logic and the core content of the system, they can use it for this as well. And of course, there are properties for the values and for the RDS specification as well. And this is what it is. Yeah, does not right now the CCI containing those 5 basic tables. The sixth table for the construction complexes are under preparation. I hope it will be published soon next year. And those are the principles which we agreed on when we established this organization and start collaborating. Jan mentioned many of them. For us, again, it's very important, any license fee without any license fee. So the content of the classification system is free for use, and that's the booster how to allow the industry the adoption. This is just the terms. I put it here because I assume that you will have later on the presentation. I will not bother you here with any those definitions, but it's sometimes important to know that. This is the numbers of standards which are used for the content. Some of them are updated, so the slide should be updated as well, because there are the new versions 2022 for some standards. There are some planet removing and changes between the standards, but this is the basic framework of the standards for the content of the classification system. Yeah, these 2 ones. On this slide, I put just the principles, which again, it's good for me to think about and remind it time to time, because again, we are usually stuck in the details, but this is the principles which we follow. Clear criteria for classification, so that's very, very important for us. Unique class, that's again, classes to be simpler. It was mentioned by the unique class, or let's say the more old-fashioned or traditional classification systems. If you know them, you know that there are hundreds and hundreds of classes and subclasses and so on and so on. So this classification system, CCI, is trying to going the different way, putting together the small number of classes that are stable. That's will follow up the main reason what we need to do to share the data for the whole life cycle, from the design through the construction phase to the operating and maintenance phase. And it's a really, really huge task to manage that. And if you go much more in detail, I believe that it's the purpose why it fails, because the needs of the different actors are really different. And when you go too much in detail, they need something different. So it's, I feel, the reason how it could work really for the whole life cycle. And one thing I want to mention, because I get a lot of questions and misunderstanding between these acronyms, CCI, IFC. These things are not competitive. They are not doing the same thing, because, again, the IFC is just the schema for the open data to transfer. This is not a classification system. The classification is just the part of the structure. Of course, IFC schema can transmit any classification system like uniclass, co-class, omniclass, whatever class you want it. Yeah. So that's not the case. Here are just the samples. Later on, you will see much more in detail things, how to describe parts of the construction. And the last slide, it's about the CCI challenges, how we feel, what we need to do, improve, finish, or whatever, how to move it to really happen. That word ontology, it's one of the buzzwords which is flying around. That word means that there are no need always to define the same exactly words, because it's basically in real world it's impossible. Every nation have own legal system, have own requirements, the specific things, specific terms, and the ontology is just trying to connect and make relations between those definitions, not putting and forcing that everybody have to use just one definition. So it's very important to understand how the ontology works, and it's the basic answer for that question about the uniclass and the answer about the ICMS or any other classification or definitions, because one of the tasks for the ontology, for example, for us in Czech Republic, is to create the ontology relations between the classes, definition of the classes of the CCI, and between the law for the building permits, because they are used different words, different wording, different definitions, and we need to do the relations. Not force to CCI use them, but to make them make the relations between them. And this is possible, the only way how we can do that. But of course, again, for example, for the uniclass, it's impossible to do the mapping, because if you want to do mapping one-to-one, we don't need two classification system. That there will be basically the same one if you do the relation one-to-one. So it's impossible to do that. It's can be based only on the ontology relations to some of the levels of that hierarchy. And you can read the more challenges. I feel that is clearly described here. Again, the most important examples, use cases, pilot projects, and the feedback from them. That's the key. I fully agree with Jan, what he said before. This is the key point for us to make it happen. So that's it from me and from my side. Thank you for your attention. Of course, I'm ready for answers and questions if they follow.
Thank you, Yaroslav. There's one question here from online audience, so don't hurry away. There's a question from Lucy. I would like to know why to create a very new classification system if there have been already other systems widely used. What is the difference between, for example, uniclass and CCI?
I feel there are much more better experts after me to answer that, but from my knowledge, the reasons I've tried to explain it, but again, it's a small part of the time, shortly. We are definitely focus just on the standards. Yeah, so following international standards. We are focusing for low amount of the classes which are stable through the whole life cycle. Yeah. For example, if you try to classify the window, you can use it in a CCI. You have 1 classes. In Uniclass, I feel it's more than 80 of them. Omniclass, more than 200 classes for window, just window. And you can feel, without any detailed knowledge, that if I have 200 items to choose one or one, there is a much easier way how to work with it. And again, if I choose something from 200 plus, it's really dangerous that it will change during the whole cycle. So I have to change the classification, and to be honest, who will do that? Yeah, so the information will disconnect from the reality to the digital representation. So again, the stable, simpler, and following up the standards. That's main reasons for me.
And Dario said that Uniclass doesn't have semantic definitions, and that's a big problem.
Yeah. So again, much more detailed experts can follow up.
Okay, but there's one more question I would like to direct to you. Classification is a part of the IFC, as you said, but Madars is asking, wouldn't it be better to build classification on top of IFC instead of trying to map it afterwards?
I don't feel that's the case. This is a different thing, because IFC schema is just trying to organize somehow the data, but generally, yeah, we need to go much more in detail. That's where it is the useful. Yeah? Before I said Uniclass is too much in detail. IFC is I feel too it's above it. Yeah, so we need something in middle of it. And again, it's about the definitions, about the standards, how to organize the data from the other domains, not just for the organizing the data. The IFC schema is, from my knowledge and how I see it, is just for organizing the data. Lots of data transmitting as the open formats from any vendors to be independent and so on and so on. That's just about organizing the data structures. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaroslav. Any questions from the audience here? We have such a smart audience. They catch everything on the fly.
Perfect presenters.
You don't have to say anything twice. Thank you again, Jaroslav. Next, I would like to invite on stage here Raido Puust from Tallinn Technical University. And he's going to talk more about what's going on in Estonia regarding CCIC. So this is your presentation, right? Hopefully it'll run. So take it away, Raido. Stage is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, I have a great honor to present our, let's say, first official partner of CCIC member presentation, and to give a quick overview what we have done and what we plan to do. But also, I do have some information as a background, which was actually stated by Jan already, meaning that to give a context to the audience, especially maybe who are taking part online, that CCI and CCIE for us, it was initiated by project. Actually, there were 2 projects, and during that time also CCI Core and CCIE were developed. I will show some slides how we define CCIE and also why we did it, why we have it. So 2 different projects, and second one actually, which lasted 1 year, almost 1 year, was to clarify, let's say, guidelines, to help to take it in use. In the end, I will show a couple of pilots. So we are doing some pilots, but they are not finished, of course. So and probably never finished in terms of that new pilots should be made as well. In here, you can see a snapshot from 2006 part 2, And as a clarification, CCI core part is basically those green tables, yes? And what we did with E kind of extension, we defined also the lower part, basically construction process and construction resources. And why we did it, I think that it's quite common in quite many countries that there are many different, let's say, classification systems in parallel. And it's true for Estonian as well. So to be able to bring those standards into one ecosystem, that's what we did. We basically mapped different standards, but it's not just copy and paste. It's also connecting to those core tables. So to have one ecosystem to enable classification at construction part, yeah. So, but the story doesn't end in here, of course. So this is a kind of a structure that is available and that can be used, as Jaroslav said. There is no need to wait at even core level. You can start using it. But in terms of different, let's say, user guides and use cases, of course, this part can be improved. A bit bigger picture, what kind of standards were included, for example, into EE part or Estonian local part, and also connection, those core tables, which standards are used in there. As Jaroslav mentioned also, CCI core is purely based on ISO, EN and ISC standards. But you can see that the story doesn't end in here, and it's really important that through use cases we actually develop other parts which help to take it in use. And especially this lower part, which is a kind of visualization. Of course, there could be different ones, but in terms of our CCIE, yes, so guidelines, which are also available at our partner website, Ehituskeskus, those should be connected to other information requirements. So it's just one part, and it can't be used just alone. So for example, I believe that different countries do have their own PIM requirements, so the connection part should be bring up to those requirements as well. And of course, to help to take the CCI in use, some application instructions should be generated as well. And this application part and also to help actually to use CCI in different workflows, some exchange templates can be also provided to help people to take it in use. Yeah. So, and considering this part, like application instructions and exchange templates, there are additional materials available, and actually those are also in English. And to help understand people more easily how it can be done, it doesn't mean that this is a way how you have to do it. You can, of course, change and tune it up, but at least there are examples and also models that can be downloaded to see how CCIE has been applied, how it's used in some sample models. So, including also software templates. Well, probably some of you can recognize that in here you can see Autodesk Revit and also from infrastructure side Civil 3D, but it's not meant to be like that, okay, if I'm not the user of this particular software, then I can't use it. This is just an example, and you can kind of follow the same rule set, not rule set, but user guide, and then bring it up into whatever software you want to use. And also, before I move to pilots, I would like to just point out quite an important part, which was also mentioned by Jaroslav, that CCI helps us to structure the data. And even it actually helps to define, let's say, unique ID. This is a concept, yeah, which can be tested again based on CCIE. Meaning that different software packages actually do use different unique IDs. Is it a global unique ID? Is it some element ID? Whatever. But if you want to combine this data into one again, client database, so you can actually use CCI-based ID. And based on that, you can also export this data into different formats, into different structured formats, like Gobi. Well, Gobi is not used in Estonia, but this is again an example that with the help of structured data model, you can start using such things as well. And it can be also basically whatever table format you generate out of it. And in here you can see examples that how this CCIE unique ID concept has been exported into Gobi table. So like some of you probably know, type table, and in here you can see CCI types. I didn't mention that in addition to CCIE, those application tables means that you develop additional types and subtypes to help to actually connect to owner asset register, for example. And also in here you can see a snapshot of unique ID concept. Again, if you publish it, you can take it out, and whatever the software you use, you can bring it on to different platforms. So those are examples. But what about pilots? We have one pilot going on, which is ending soon. We have to make some conclusions. It's a cruise terminal, not very far from here. And what we have tested, of course, to input, because this has been built already. Yeah, and it was one case study that we wanted to pilot. That okay, we have to start from somewhere. We have to try it out. We have to input CCI code into the model, and to enable to get some use cases, to valuable use cases to the owner. So what we have done, we have some part of the model, yes, and we have CCI EE in place, and then we have tested it in some of specific use cases like cost management, and also how we can get this information to some model-based asset environment. So this will end soon. We will make conclusions, and hopefully you can ask more soon. And the next one is actually connected to me directly, which comes from Tallinn University of Technology. And we are dividing this story into two parts. This is going on. Of course, we have, let's say, 15 different buildings. And when we talk about pilot, it doesn't make sense to digitize all the buildings. We basically don't have those BIM models yet. Yeah, so we have to order a model which can be reused later on for different use cases, and we have to include this, or at least test to include this CCI codes in that model. So this is a procurement. This will be done, and hopefully for one building it will be finished by February, March. And then the second part, which is basically based on those models, yeah, is integration. Because each owner and client to have their own systems into where they want to integrate, let's say, model-based information, yeah. And in here you can see a snapshot. It's in Estonia, but some of the terms are recognizable. You can see a snapshot of Tallinn University of Technology, how many actually different IT systems there are that can have an input, let's say, from a classified model. And with the help of model-based workflows, we hopefully can dismiss some of those and to make a combination, or at least to have a more modern solution. So this integration pilot will end in the summer of next year. Again, it's a procurement, but with the help of our estate department and also our own resources. So by that, thank you, and let's see, do we have questions?
Thank you, Raido. Let me see on Zoom if we have any questions. Nobody's written anything for you.
Good.
But
Maybe later.
but I have a question for you, Raido. You've been working with CCI for quite some time now. Do you see?
As you as well.
Well, I'm not a technical expert. You're much more technical than me, so you understand the ins and outs of the system itself. You've also looked at different classification systems. In your view, what is kind of the best part of CCI that you see compared to other maybe classification systems?
Well, to be honest, I haven't tested any other classification system. I know the structure maybe a bit, yeah, but I think that what is good when we talk about CCI, I have been with CCI when it first became available, so I do understand it a lot better than maybe other systems, whatever, Uniclass, Omniclass, and the purposes and the story behind those. So it's easier, let's say, just for me to use it.
We actually now have questions from online as well. And this one's right up your alley. How do we implement CCI codes in Revit models with shared parameters?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think that this is a common workflow. Through the properties management, any kind of software, you include it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Easy answer.
Yeah.
There's another question, a bit more complex, from David. It's about BSDD. Would you be up to tackling BSDD questions as well?
Probably not, but let's
well,
just
the
shoot.
question is, have you shared some of your experiences with its developers? So meaning Building Smart Data Dictionary developers. But I think this
is more or less, we discussed it actually yesterday in our technical committee, and I think that, we don't have any answer yet, but this is something we try to do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's something we are working with. We're looking into how to best take advantage of BSDD, and we're definitely in contact with the developers, with Leon van Berlo, who is technical director for Building Smart International. And luckily I'm also on the board of Building Smart International, so I can keep tabs on what's going on there as well. But thank you again, Raido. And now we have a slight change of plans. We had planned for Eva Kaiserova to present also the Czech BIM strategy, but it turns out it's gonna be Jaroslav again. So welcome, Jaroslav, back to the stage, and take it away.
Thank you. I will just try to show you what is going on the Czech Republic, and not just about the terms of the CCI, but again, I will try to give you more context because CCI again, it's down ground floor for using the information management, which is describing for me the BIM acronym. But you need much more to be useful. So I will just give you some short slides about what is going on national level in Czech Republic, and afterwards what is the part of the CCI inside it. So I was and the other my colleagues are representative of the Czech Standardization Agency. Czech Standardization Agency is the part of the national standardization body, and it's related to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, which is the main player with the ministry which is responsible for the Czech government about the Czech national strategy. So the role of Czech Standardization Agency in that is to government the professional platform, the platform of the professionals bring them together and creating the standards, guidelines, manuals, and whatever. So that's our main tasks are standards, methodology, and education, which is a very, very important part of it, because one thing is written down something and publish it on the website, but it means nothing happened in that, because we know everybody that people are not reading things and so on, so on. So we need to find more practical way how to get it to the practice. So education is a very important part of it. You can see here the key domains of the National BIM strategy. You can see from that it's covering all the aspects which information management really needs to be done. So that's a very large scale of activities which are running from 2018, so after 5 years right now. And there are some success, of course, there are some fails, of course, as well. But the most important thing from my side is that really the public sector in Czech Republic stop solving if, but they are just right now solving how. So that's the biggest success from my point of view. So lots of pilot projects, and Jiří will present you some of them related to the CCI later on in practical way, in the deepest detail. This slide I did 5 years ago. I still keep it in my presentation just to remind me that I can sign all those words after 5 years as well. And I want to point out the red ones. Yeah, standardization and collaboration and information sharing, and that's the key how we can move forward. Without that, we are lost in our bubbles and silos and get lost completely. So we need to get out from these things and try to share them and move forward. Our main principles in Czech Republic, the main one, not reinventing wheel again and again. That's why we CCIC and in many others platforms and organizations like EUBIM Task Group and so on, because we need to really share and collaborate, and actively, not just passively. We are not just sitting on the back seat. We are trying to help to move the wheel as well. So we are active, very active. Our representatives are very active in the CEN and ISO working groups and TC committees. And our outcomes are based definitely on the international standards, which is very important for us. And our mandatory BIM, preparing mandatory BIM, because one of the key activities right now running in Czech Republic is preparing the law of the BIM for the public sector to be a mandatory BIM. It is Czech government, Czech ministry decide to do it by the separate simple law, like Danes have, and some other countries as well. And this is the 3 main pillars in that law. And one of them is the BIM protocol, for example, which needs to be added to the contract for the public procurement. And inside the BIM protocol, you need to have the information requirements, and those information requirements containing, of course, the CCI as the classification system, which allow public sector to connect data, and of course, in the future, it allows the e-governmental agendas using the structured data and understand them same way. So here are again the same numbers which you saw in my presentation in the jersey of the CCIC. Right now I'm in the jersey of the Czech Standardization Agency. And this is just a briefly overview about the current activities and actions which are running in Czech Republic right now, and the future challenges. Yeah, that's those things are of course in front of us. And again, it's about the use cases, pilot projects, feedbacks, and what is very important for us. It's parallelly running another very important governmental projects called digital building permits, which belongs under the different ministry, and joining those 2 activities into the common outcomes, it's very, very important to us as well. All the information you can find on this website. Yeah, so it's just the website, of course, is in Czech, but you can find and use the translators, and you can get more information and more thoughts about what is going on. Also documents you can find as the inspiration for you as well, maybe, and so on. So that was just the biggest contents what is running in Czech Republic, and the CCI is the part of it because it's a part of the common digital language as I described it before, and you can see some of the same mock-ups, same schemas. I will just show you the data dictionary, because what I feel from Raido's presentation, basically we have the acronym DSS, data. It means Data Construction Standards, but this is basically more or less the same as the CCI EE. What is important for us, again, the Learn principle: why, who, when, and what. Yeah, that's the key. How you can collect together different ideas, different needs, different requirements, different actors, and so on and so forth. That's the basic principle, and make it this true is the key. How you can start creating the snowball principle. This is at the core of the snowball, and after that the core is really fixed and understood by all the actors. Afterwards you can move and add next layers, because you have fixed the core. If you are not able to fix that core, they are still moving, and there are the endless discussions, what if, and so on, so on. So that's very important to create these things. And of course, the classification system is the part of the data templates, as I explained it before from generally CCIC point of view. In Czech Republic, we are trying to follow up this naturally. The schema is exactly the same as there, because I just use it. That's the role of the agency in the middle. The agency is implementing the information system, which is based, of course, on the database. And inside the database is the data dictionary, which is published freely for the whole industry. So not just the public sector, of course, the private sector as well can use it. I can share the data templates and unique GITs and unique identifiers, and CCI is the part of it, of course, as well. This is you can see just a snapshot from our website, where the construction data standards, generally the data dictionary is published. Of course, the content is just in Czech, but you can see it right here. This slide you basically saw before, because it's the same, of course, because on the Czech implementation of the CCI, we are following the CCIC, the international principles. So basically this is you already saw that. And this is the online viewer of the CCI, because what you saw before, it was the whole data dictionary, but this is just the classification system. So you can see here those 5 tables, and you have the online viewer. You can click on that. You can use it as the Google, just typing in some word, and the online viewer will show you where you can use those words and where are used and what class you have to. You can use it. What is very important is this icon. You can click on every class and give us the feedback. What is missing there, if it's understandable, if it's not understandable, if there's somebody missing there something. So very easy for every user to give us the feedback when they are browsing the content, when they found something which is not suitable for them. Just click on that, and they can send us the feedback easy way. So that's it. CCI in the governmental activities. That's very important, because we are the part of the national strategy. So we were focused on national agendas as well. So another, and it's a very successful project running on the different ministries and regions. It's dedicated to regions. They are creating digital technical maps. It's digital maps of the utilities and so on. And they are using own data structure, of course, specifically for their domain. But we have the mappings between those structures and the CCI. That's very important for us. So that's doable, because in case of using, for example, for the building digital building permits, we can use easily those data which are already there. Czech Statistical Bureau, that's very important for us as well as the entity. We did the mappings of the CCI to Eurostat CC classification system. In Czech Republic, we are using something called cc.cz. There are some specific national editions, so we did the mapping, those specific editions as well. And the Czech Statistical Bureau is fine with using the CCI as the primary classification system for collecting the data, and afterwards they can remap them for the reporting the Eurostat to the Brussels and so on. So that's doable. So that's a great milestone for us as well. We are working with the National Register of Address and Geodatabase, trying to map these things as well. And the last big success for us is to agree with the Ministry of the Finance using and usable, they see the usable CCI for their needs and their requirements about the taxes and the other agendas which belongs under the Ministry of the Finance. So that's a huge success for us. It's fresh one. Of course, I mentioned it before, digital building permits, it's much complicated things in Czech Republic. It's partly a political thing as well. So, yeah, moving back and forth and so on. But again, we are discussing these things. I hope that we move positively forward. And what is one of the important things to get closer, for example, with this project or the other ones, is again the ontology. And we start using the ontology IT system, which is very important for us as well. Yesterday we agreed on the base of the CCIC, World International, that we will share this information system to the other members of the CCIC, so we can commonly govern and maintain the content of the CCI and possibly map these differences to another. And we are using this internally for defining the relations to the Czech legal system, because that's, of course, obviously existing before the CCI. We don't have the power and some magic wand that we just change everything. It's impossible, of course. We are realistic about that. But we can start mapping those things and creating that map, and afterwards the responsible ministries and organizations can decide what they want to do with that. So that's very important step ahead again to understand each other more. And the last thing are supporting activities, but they are very important for us as well. Collaboration with the software vendors. That's we have their success as well. You can see some brands and some product names in the brackets. They are successfully implement CCI into their environment, so the users of those tools can use it for creating their own digital models, and afterwards they can use the CCI in the exports and reports and the tools. So it's very important for the pilot projects and for validation. Again, it's the support of the pilot projects, because we are supporting the public sector when they are creating the BIM protocols and the information requirements to make it reasonable, to make it doable for the suppliers to be able to deliver their requirements. So that's a very important part of our supporting activities. And again, I mentioned that education. So we do it on 3 levels: secondary, construction, secondary schools, universities, which is very important partners for us. And of course, the professional training will start at the beginning of the next year. So I feel it's the end of the presentation. So that's it, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you again, Jaroslav. Yeah, in Estonian we have a saying that the mother of knowledge is repetition. So it's good to, some cases, go over some important things over and over again. There's no questions here on the Zoom chat yet, but as so far it's been that I ask a question, then somebody asks a question. But I see in our audience, a brave soul has raised a hand. Go ahead.
Hello, nice to see you, Jaroslav, and Jan also.
Great to see you.
We met in Prague last time for this type of event. I have one question. My name is Anna-Riitta Kallinen. I come from Finland. And last time when I was in Prague, I get the impression that you have a tender process ongoing for the digital building permit platform. Is that proceed, or how is the situation? And that was in the ministry that was hold this tender process on. Just for the basic information about the building permit.
I'm not in position right now to have the specific detailed information of how it is right now, because one thing is running under the different ministry. It's not under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And the secondly, I actually in the position of the external consultant from the September, so I don't have the detailed information. Okay. But generally, yes, they are preparing lots of activities. My last information from summer was that they are preparing the specification for the tendering, the systems and so on, trying to evaluate with the e-governmental bodies the architecture of the solution and so on.
Yes.
So they are doing.
But that sounds good that you will have the unified system, the platform that you can have the applications and at least, if not application process, for the building information that you are having via the building permit.
Yeah, the concept is that to have the one common information system for all the municipalities which will be using that shared system. That's the wallet. This one.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience here? No? We have a question online as well. Quite simple one. Do we have any add-ins or tools to implement CCI information to 3D models, like for Revit, ArchiCAD? You mentioned that in Czechia there are, right?
Yeah, that's it's mentioned. I maybe can find the slide again. Yeah, it's here. Yeah, what I have and I saw by my eyes, so I can witness that. I saw the add-on in Revit, and again, it's an example how beneficial it is that the CCI is the part of the international standards, because that tool was not developed in Czechia. It was developed somewhere outside. They use it because it follows the international standards. They fill in just the different content in Czech language, Czech translation for the Czech users. But the principles of that tool is usable in Revit as it is. So they spend small amount of the time, small amount of the money, and they have the product they can use for the Czech users.
Where can somebody find this tool? Where do they have to turn to?
I'm not a reseller for the Autodesk, so that's and we cannot even name it. So you have to check the Czech representation of the Autodesk, and they will follow you. Okay. It's not secret, but again, we have to be more neutral. And the other ones, especially Tekla as well. There are lots of tools. The Czech representative for the Trimble is very active on that, so that they have really, and I feel some presentation in Poland was done about that tool as well. So they are operating on more markets. Again, we see the benefits, how we can use it. When in case of Polish guys will translate it into Polish language, they can start using it right away.
And by the way, because there was previously a question about building smart data dictionary I forgot to mention that CCI is actually already in the Building Smart Data Dictionary, thanks to our friends from Denmark, especially Soren. So tools that integrate with BSDD, you can also already start experimenting to see how you can add CCI codes through those tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but no more questions online for you. Thank you, Jaroslav.
You're welcome.
And yeah. And now it's my pleasure to invite our next speaker. And this is going to be Ella from Poland, Building Smart Poland to be more precise. And your presentation should be here online. Clicker is here, microphone. So please, stage is yours.
Thank you. I'm from Poland, and I will try to answer for this question today. But at the beginning, let me introduce myself and Anna. I'm Elżbieta Wielchowska. I'm a member of Building Smart Poland. I'm individual member. It means I don't represent any company, just myself. I'm also a member of CCI Technical Committee from September last year, so it's over 1 year. We cooperate together. And Anna is executive director of Building Smart Poland, and she's also member of the board. And also she's member of the CCI Board of Trustees. Anna is here. And I would like to talk a little bit about the past, not too much, because it could be a little boring maybe. And you can see here the common road with the classification code. But I would like to tell about our journey, which follow us to this place here and to the CCI community. When at 2019 the Polish chapter of Building Smart was established, one of the first topic was what we need to implement open standards in Poland, and everybody has agreed that the classification system is one of the key topics. Because, as you mentioned before, the IFC standard doesn't cover all the needs, and we need something more to explain and much detail some requirements. And the classification system is a great bridge between the requirements and the, for example, offers of the manufacturers, offers of the from the construction sector, and that's why we start our research from here. It was done by my colleagues. I wasn't active member at this time from the beginning, and my colleagues start to research for the best classification system, which could be implemented in Poland. And which could be fitted to the Polish needs and Polish local requirements. And this road followed them to the international COCLAS meeting in Brussels. And then they met our current colleagues from CCI first time. And then we have heard first time about this idea, a common international classification system. After finalizing our analysis, we decided to join the community at December 2020. And the first seminar which we held together, you can follow this QR code. It's link directly to the recording of this meeting. It was in English. It was great point for people which would like to start the cooperation with the CCI collaboration. And believe me, you can start from here. You don't need to do this road before, because we did it the same like Estonian people, Czech people, Lithuanian people. You don't need to do the research. You can start from here, and there are just bases about the CCI, and also our kind of summarize our journey and our research, and we show also our conclusions why we think this solution is the best. And then we have a few together events when we promoting this standard on the international level. And during a few months ago, we decided to start to promote it in Poland. And it was first webinar in Polish language here, which we organized for our members and our every people which was interested about it. And our guest was Raido, and he explained how the Estonian version of standard was developed. And we have, and also I will present our idea. I will talk about it for a while. Our idea for the MVP version of Polish classification systems. And we met the very positive feedback of our works, but this is now still our bottom-up idea, only from our association. At this moment, we don't have any financial support from any public institution in this topic. That's why we decide to prepare something like MVP. It's just the shape of future Polish standard as we like to. It could looks like, and as it will be based on the CCI core tables content and some parts of CCIE version, because I think that the construction information part is really interesting, because it's based on international standard, and we could describe some properties in the same way, like it was done in Estonia. That's why it will be quite interesting for us to check if it will be also met our needs, this part of Estonian classification. And we decide to start with some small project which will help people in Poland understand what is the CCI, and we would like to prepare some technical materials and to show how it could work. Technical materials, I mean kind of IFC models, very simple, some kind of a spreadsheet with the CCI codifications, maybe some kinds of proposal of documents which could exist on Polish market, which contain this common naming convention and codification from CCI. So we'd like to prepare some basic materials like guidance, and at the end our official statement why we should use it in Poland. It's important because our goal is also popularize the standard in Poland, but also obtain the funds for maintain this classification system as a national standard, as an open standard, and we hope it will be available online, because our idea is prepare something similar like in Czechia, online tool. We are waiting for the request for our IT support, what they could propose for us. They know that Czech solution, maybe it will be something similar based on the same standard. And a little bit about activities on the ministry level, because this year, at the spring, this year, the BIM task group was established at the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology. The goal of this BIM task group is prepare a strategy of BIM implementation in Poland. They have not too much time because the strategy should be ready next year. And one of the key topics for this group of experts was the Polish classification system. They decided we really need it. It's one of the key points. And at summer, they decide to create some project sheet for classifications works, and with the indication that the CCI standard was, which the people involved in this topic decide it's the most advanced, and it could be our national standard too. We got invited for a meeting in the ministry. I mean the few members of our association, and we got a meeting with the head of construction department and with the head of BIM task group, and we talk about this classification systems, the possibilities to fitting it to our national needs, and they were really interesting about it. And the plans for the next year is to establish the task group which will be take care about this classification topic. And this group, it will be a kind of support for the main BIM task team. And the goal of this task team, classification task team, will be to create a strategy of classification implementation in Poland. It will be part of the main strategy of BIM implementation. Of course, members of our association are candidates for this team. It's not established yet, but we hope it will happen in January next year. But you need to know that the task of this team won't be not to create the content of classification, just to create the key points, the key topics which the classification system should cover, and create some way how we did it. You can follow this QR code. There is a link to the ministry website when all the documents created by this BIM task group are publicated. Everything is open. Also the notes from meetings. So you can follow these activities. It's in Polish, but you know it's no problem with Uncle Google now. And on the end, I would like to invite you for our conference at May. It will be just one day, the conference. The classification for sure will be one of the topic, maybe not only as a speech, but also as a workshop, because we have plans to organize some workshops in the second part of day. And believe me, Warsaw is beautiful at May, the same like Tallinn in winter. So you are welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ella. Quite a lot happening in Poland in terms of CCI. Yeah, microphone.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
yes, it happened very good initiatives, and I hope we will have an impact.
But I understand the government is now also involved on the ministry level, that they're looking into
yes.
Classification and
yes.
BIM.
Yes, and they ask us how we could support them in this topic. There is not indicated at this moment that it will be for sure CCI, but I hope we are able to convince people, for example, sharing the examples from Czechia, from Estonia, how it works, that it really works. It's the simple way to show on the use cases some topics. But we also would like to prepare some use cases in our this stage of project to convince people which are not technical, but which could decide if it could help them, for example, in some some task in building authorities, like reporting and future building permits process.
And what about from the industry side? You're of course from Building Smart Poland, which is representing the industry, but are there a lot of companies who are asking for kind of let's agree on a classification, or are they more like a bit more vague and not that active in that, more kind of viewers, not participators in this process?
Well, at the first, I think it's very important that Building Smart is established by the biggest construction companies represents, which would like to create such common language, because in each companies, construction companies, designers, each huge company or even smaller has his own classification system only for internal needs. And the problem is that the companies think that's, and they are right, of course, this is their value, their something they shouldn't show. And one of the topic at the beginning, during the research of my colleagues, which are represents from this construction sector, construction companies, was if this classification system should be such flexible to be able to the mapping for the existing classification systems which exist in their practice in their companies, because they don't want to change it. They prepared many tools they have prepared, and they don't want to change it, but they want to find some way to mapping, for example, CCI to their classification and export the data only with the CCI and hide their tools and their solutions, because it's not good, because of the competitors are many on the markets, and everybody would to invent something to work faster and simple. That's why they are really interesting about this common classification system.
Okay, so they can kind of keep their working methods, processes, their IP to themselves, and they don't have to expose it to everybody else.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ella. Are there any questions from the room? No hands that I can see. Luckily, it's not that big of a room, so it's easy to see. But thank you again, Ella.
Thank you.
And now for this section, the last presentation, I would like to invite on stage Martin, sorry. Big mistake. Let me just find your presentation. Martin is coming from the BIM Association of Slovakia. Very happy that you made it here, all the way to Tallinn. So please, take it away. Tell us what's happening regarding CCI in Slovakia.
Thank you, everybody. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Also, ladies and gentlemen behind the screen. Actually, as I can see, I'm already 3 minutes late, so I didn't even start. So I will try to speed it up as much as possible. As it's been mentioned, I'm coming here from Slovakia as a representative of the BIM Association Slovakia. It's a non-profit organization established in 2013. Right now, it's up to 47 members of our association, and we are in close cooperation with the technical universities. And what we try is to bring together the BIM experts. And the downsides, as I've heard from the last presentation, is that yet probably we don't have the support from the higher structures and the government, but hopefully that would change sometimes. So, as mentioned, our mission is the collection and gathering of information related to the BIM within the Slovakia, and our goals is the systematic support of the BIM implementation, promotion of the BIM, and the preparation of the materials and documents for easier and faster integration into the processes. Just the quick overview: the BIMAS committees. There is the presidential committee, which also one of those members is sitting with us. There is an expert committee, board of directors, and the executive part, or the work groups actually. There's been the restructure of the work groups, and since 2021, we decided to go for the 4 work groups. The first one is the work group which is focusing on exchange information requirements. The second one is the one for the BIM classification, and then there's been the third and 4, which is level of information and level of geometry, to standardize it in some way in Slovakia. So more about the work group 2. Oh, and not to forget, there's been also some achievements from the very beginning. Or was it this Monday, I think? It's been presented, the exchange information template for everybody in Slovakia. It's publicly available, and it's really written like the handbook to the clients. On one side, there is this template how the final document should look like, and on the other side, on the very same double page, there is this explanation how to, why to, and just how to proceed in those stuff. And just some time before, there's been also the BIM execution plan template prepared for the other party, which is the one document is for the appointing party, and one template is for the appointed party to also balance some support. But more about the workgroup 2, which is requirements for BIM classification. Right now we've got 19 members, and it's the person, it's not the companies right now, and we divided it into 2 subgroups, the architectural one, which I'm responsible for leading, and then there's a civil engineering group, which one of our colleagues is responsible of taking care of. To speed it up, I would just go through our approach, how we felt it, and what was our way to achieve it, because I wouldn't talk about the numbers and the ISO stuff and etc. But rather, also our mission and vision is to promote it to the people that are not in that detail into the topic, just to understand the stuff. So the purpose of us is a method of sorting and classifying elements, which was required. What we wanted to do is the possibility of use the classification system for different use cases, not only for the one, to take into account different requirements regarding the processor of the information, and to allow the uniform classification throughout the life cycle. And also, last but not least, it's really necessary to allow user-defined subdividing afterwards. So we can only unify it in some scale, but we cannot force everybody to go from a very strict way all the way. To fit the goals, we need to also prioritize our principles and how to approach this topic. The first of our principle was to try an international system, not to create the Slovakian one. The second one was not to create our new standards, as it's been mentioned in here, not to reinvent the wheel. The orientation towards the machine data processing and incorporation of the classification into the open BIM standards, and possibility to filter by multiple criteria. What were our first steps, actually? We met with a representative from Czech Standardization Association, with Mr. Buneš. Thank you once more for your time. We secured ISO norms to use and studied in the work groups, because they have not been translated into our language yet. And that way we thoroughly studied the classification systems by our members in the work groups. And we wanted to establish a test project to assess usability and sustainability of such a system. And of course, the main part is also translation to the local language. What we did after 1 year, we created a presentation for our members as results of our workgroup task. What we did and what we found out is that the CCI system could fit our criteria. It's based on the ISO norms. It's supporting the information, but the, let's say, difference from the classification systems that are also used in the world is not the naming of the class, but rather the definition of each class is necessary to be understood and fit to the element. The table of constructions, ISO, and the big part, or difference from the different classification system, it's also a question which arises multiple times, if it's possible to map it. It's partially possible, because most of the classification systems right now are using the 3 hierarchy, like expanding one, and this one is based on the facet. So So it's different groups of the classification, and that way you can search, filter, and utilize it in the way you really want to work with the information. And there are some predecessors, and the implementation was ongoing in Czech Republic. It was really one of the key factors as well, because our two countries are cooperating on the daily basis, maybe even more than some different countries because of the history and the interconnection. What were our further goals in BIM Association, and especially the work group, is to complete the translation of the CCI core tables, implement it on our website to be accessible via the API or throughout the database stuff, create an application to search for the names on the web page, and the really important part is creation of a plugin to be used in various software solutions, because as it's been mentioned, it's tailored for machine data processing, and that way it's really hard for people to fill in the data just by the hands. There's been a great news last Friday actually. It's been already asked the question, and probably I can tell a little bit more about the stuff. We finished the translation of our core tables in our work in progress version. The implementation is ongoing, the creation of the web application is ongoing, but the creation of a plugin for one of those software solutions has already been done, actually. The plugin is called Class Feeder. As it's, let's say, the name is telling, it's to classify the objects efficiently using the CCI system. It's got the user-friendly app, and it's always up to date thanks to the live connection to the XML databases on the web pages of those stuff. It's always up to date, as I've told it. It allows you to quickly search through the database, searching by identification codes, descriptions, synonyms, examples, etc. There is also the effective solution, so it's working bidirectionally. You can either select it within your model and then to add the parameters, or you can pre-select it from vice versa. Like if I select some category that is mainly linked to the system, and not to utilize the program stuff, but the system container, then it's possible to map it together. And also it's easy to check model classification if right now it's in the first version, so it's not possible to check it by the criteria, but it's possible to check it if it's filled or if it's not filled completely. This is how it looks like actually. So the first one, you select the classification system. Right now it's only the CCI, then select the language version of the CCI, which is the English, of course. You can select the parameters, which needs to be filled in with the parameters, and on the second screen you can see like this is the browser of the elements inside the project, and you can just select and search for the classification abbreviation, meanings, etc., and just by one click to put it into the model actually in the correct places. And on the last picture, there is this green and red marking, like if the element has been classified or it's not classified yet. So you can have a quick overview of your model. With those tools, actually, that was also one of our part. We tried to do the test and pilot project probably for those purposes to present it, but doing it hand by hand would be so time consuming that it just doesn't make a sense. So that's why we're happy that we've got this classification. If the question would come, if we already tested it, not yet, because it's been released on Friday and we are third day here in Tallinn. So unfortunately, I was not able to test it on the run, but from the information and from the discussion we've got with those guys, it seems that it's in a good way, and they're also open to adapt it. So based on this information, we immediately reacted, and within the work group and the BIM Association, we slightly adapted our further steps. So what we wanted to do is to finalize the Slovak database and create a connection with those two. If that's established, then the developers of the application, they told us that it's possible to connect it, so we can have Slovak classification in here as well in number of weeks or days or whatsoever. And then the further step is to test and distribute it throughout the AAC community in Slovakia to make the word spread. So yeah, I'm out of time, but thank you for your attention, and hopefully we did our best to finish it.
Thank you, Martin. That was really, really efficient, and you weren't out of time. You started late, so you are perfectly in time. I have a question for you regarding again government involvement in Slovakia. How is that going? Is the construction classification topic on the agenda of the government as well?
I would not say it's about the classification topic. It's rather about the building information modeling topic at all. So we don't have that in agenda yet, actually. And we did our best. We tried also from multiple sides, like how to improve it. But right now, what we decided is the most efficient way. We cannot wait for the mountain to come, actually. So we did as we can within our capacities, in our free time, and with the really enthusiasts that are in the BIM Association of Slovakia, because it's either the time that the people should be working in the company, or it's their free time when they're trying to develop and utilize it for the others. So that's how we approach it right now.
No, but I see you're doing great progress, and it's really good to see the plugin now also available.
Yep.
To everybody.
If somebody would be interested, I didn't mention it in the presentation because of reasons, but if you just reach me on any media, I can reply you and provide you further information.
And Klaas also had a question online for you. Are the ISO 19650 documents you mentioned, the employer information requirements, also available in English, or are they only in your local language?
Those are not in the local language, if I'm sure. So it's only in English. In Slovakia, it's only English. Even the 19650 ISO, it's been translated just recently. So that's how it is.
Okay, so it's actually there in English. You can have a look at.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, we have from Irji. Can I pass the microphone him? Oh, there's another one. Okay, sorry.
I would like to ask Martin if he can go back to the print screen of the tool. And I would like to point also on the fact that the tool is now in the first version. That's true. It was presented on Friday, and I got the possibility also affect a little bit the development. And what is quite important in the tool regarding all of the group of the standards 8.13.46 is that the tool is from the beginning being prepared for using the whole RDS principles. For now, it's just handwork, as I said, or as Martin mentioned, it's the first version. But as you can see, there is the node identifier code definition, and there is the prepared fields for prefix, suffix separator, which is prepared according to the rules in the first part of 8.13.46. So that means to work according RDS on the project specific level. So I think, at least in the future, where will be more version and more automatic, it can be also helpful for the users in this field. There's just additional information. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So if there's no more questions, thank you again, Martin, for a great presentation. Yeah, to kick it off, the second part of the seminar, I already have here a good colleague, a friend, Gunnar from Denmark here, who is kind of the father of actually the classification system we are all using. And he's going to talk to us about the latest developments in Denmark, right? Yeah. So I'm just quickly gonna fire up your presentation here. And let's get it on screen. Okay, so take it away. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan, and also thank you to our Estonian host for making this public seminar possible, and also for the collaboration that we have in the CCIC. We are very happy about that. I'm going to talk a bit about the CCI use in Denmark. It's been on for quite some time now, and of course I can't go into detail with projects and things like that, but I can give you an overview and also talk a little about how it all started and what implementation challenges we also have in Denmark. So I come from a knowledge center for Danish construction industry called Molio. We are an independent place for development and establishment of the common tools, standards, and knowledge, and work very much with the BIM and how to digitalize information. The development of CCI being a part of the Danish BIM practice was actually based on that we already had requirement of BIM use for public clients established by 2007 after we had some digital development projects, and we have in Molio made exchange information requirement and BIM execution plan. We call it process manual for the parties in the construction process. And we also, on this basis, modeling, classification, and identification, and exchange of data and data of operation and maintenance was to be required by clients. I hope it's better now. All this, of course, made the basis for developing a lot of things in the digital area. And actually, we had already tried before to make a classification to make it work more digitally. It wasn't too successful. I think we missed some of the points of what we could find in the standards, and we also were encouraged by our ministry to dive into the standards that also were used by other sectors, industrial sectors, in order to improve productivity, in order to improve digitalization. So that was what we did in the Coneco project, which took place from 2011 to 15. And I'm not the only father of this. Søren Spiele, my colleague from Epsilon IT, who is also joining here. We have been together with a lot of other people involved in that process. But the interesting thing was we had a lot of dialogue with the construction industry because we had this first, what could you call it, first test project of doing so. We also had a lot of criticism around it, and that was okay. But the essence that came out of that was it had to have a focus on BIM usability. It had to, the classification system should be able to support the digital handling of information, and it should be object-oriented and look as classifying the objects and relate properties to those object classes. It was also to focus on all parties in the full life cycle of assets. Most of the classification systems, we also made a worldwide survey around it, and we found out that most classification systems focused only on consultants, not so much on the maintenance and operation, not so much about the execution. So this was important factors also to deal with. So how do we make it life cycle based and stable all through the life cycle? And we looked at these international standards. That was the 81346 standards, and found that other industries have had great benefits of using these. Still, we needed to add a lot of things. So we also, by the encouragement of our ministry, went into both the revisions and the development of those standards. And on the other hand, we were told that IFC is a data exchange format. We were quite aware of that already. So we said it has to be somehow complementary to IFC, and we can also actually make a mapping between IFC and the CCI, and we have maybe 250 objects in common. But of course, CCIC is much broader. It's not only about what is needed for the model. It's also what is needed for specification, for calculation, and for all other information interests in a life cycle based access to all the assets. so maintenance and operation and so on. But you could say, and we have mostly talked about that when we have tried to tell what was going on, the issue was to establish some kind of common language as a basis for a digital practice. And we are not the only industry trying to do that. Most industries that are successful are trying to have these things clarified in order to be able to put it into digital solutions. The implementation of CCI in the Danish BIM practice, of course, have been going on since the development process took an end in 2015. So we have been underway in 6 to 7 years now. And we started out with a Danish version called CCS. And when we adopted the changes that were made in the international 81346 standards, we named it the CCI, and it's now implemented and supported in a lot of the software that are used by the Danish construction industry, and a lot of the software vendors are also selling and supporting their products abroad. So that's one of, as also said in an earlier statement today, it's important if you base it on standard, it's more possible to spread it for across the country practice. A benefit we found out recently was that in Denmark we have a very liberal policy around classification systems. There exists quite a deal of them, old ones, newer ones, and with very specific purposes. This has to be the generic life cycle based one. I think it has been let the best system win in the end. We could have needed some governmental authority every now and then to promote it, but it's working by itself, and a majority of all public funded projects are now requiring CCS or CCI, which the original ministry who gave us the money to develop is very satisfied about. And also many clients have now adopted the CCI for their operation and maintenance, and of course that's important. We have seen all the way that there are very specific interests between the different parties in the construction process, but the client is at the end of the table and also will need to manage and operate the building for many, many years. So it's very important the client has a clear mind of what is needed to do that in a good manner, and how do we need to do this operation and maintenance also by having a digital strategy. So I think the client is a very big driver in this, and therefore it's also very satisfying now that many clients actually are looking at it and ordering, requiring it, especially with the point of operation and maintenance for purpose. When you have established the object classes that actually now exist, of course it's not a final thing still, and I will come back to that. More and more areas of the construction industry are moving into this, and of course our new object classes will need to be put into it in the long run. Then we also looking at other related topics that also is a part of having a common language, namely getting standardized properties and usable data templates for these properties. And also these had to be based on European and international standards, and some of them have already been mentioned. It's about digitizing the information about handled product information according, for instance, to Code of Product Regulation, that are the European regulations for these. And you could say when we came out with this proposal originally, we had the problem that there were no standardized properties. So when you move from a very analog, what I call sometimes old school classification system, detailing the classes into very specific subclasses based on properties, and you move to a generic classification, then you need these standardized properties. And fortunately enough, the CEN/TC 442 European standardization took the initiative 3 years ago to work with these standards to standardize properties and property data templates and how to define them. And this will now be the basis for a digitalization of product data information, so we can share it more easily between the parties in construction. So, but in order to put them in the right place, you need to have well-defined object classes. So object classes and well-defined properties are actually what we call common language, the basis for digital information exchange. And of course, sustainability is now at the agenda. So everything from life cycle analysis to life cycle cost and so on, how to record materials and chemicals used for buildings. The EU talks about the logbook, and we talk about the data templates that Jaroslav also talked about earlier. These are all things that we need to deal with, and to deal with it in a good way is as many countries as possible deal with it the same way and try to use some kind of common language. I said we were not, this is not the final thing, just having it for buildings. We had this situation that we had a discussion with the infrastructure group in Denmark called biminfra.dk about projects. Could they be made with CCI? And they had, we know they had discussions with especially the Scandinavian countries around that topic. And it was decided in their group to have a report made by Phil Jackson, who made the report about comparing classifications that could be suitable for infrastructure. And fortunately, that report said that CCI was absolutely worth looking at, and compared to others, had a lot of advantages, and could maybe also be the basis for a longer focus thing about linking data together in a meaningful way and so on. So that was the recommendation. So the BIM-Infra group in Denmark, which are the 5 to 6 biggest infrastructure clients, decided that they would try to go with CCI, and we have been involved with them throughout the last 4 years, but this takes time. It's now the first test projects have been initiated within the last year. So we started out with having a collaboration with the Danish Road Directorate about the Nordhavn Tunnel in Copenhagen. We have had some support for Banedanmark, Danish Railroad Directorate, for some of their newest lines. We have had presentations with Sund & Bælt that operates the larger bridges and tunnels in Denmark, which have already, in fact, used the 81346 principles, but have invented their own classes. So when they saw that now the international standard contained classes that they actually needed, they decided to shift their own invented classes into the official ones, the standardized one, and also they had a very much the client's focus on operation and maintenance. A part of Sund & Bælt is Femern connection. That's a tunnel between Denmark and Germany. A part of Sund & Bælt for future maintenance, and also they are moving into the CCI now. It was started to be bid out with another their own classification, but they are now focusing on how to operate and maintain it in the future by CCI. The Copenhagen Metro that we are also in dialogue with is and have not yet made any test pilots, and they are under planning for one new line where they will. I think they will try to take CCI in. And then we have the Copenhagen municipality that's also in the planning stage of some city infrastructure projects and have not yet done the pilot projects. So So a lot of things now goes on in infrastructure, and in the technical committee yesterday we were encouraged to maybe make a Danish seminar in Copenhagen in March 2023, and I'll try to find out if that's possible. Then we can share the first experience with these projects. Some of the things we did in order to explain for Sund and Bælt and the Femern project, we were not told which kind of project they talked about, but we guess it must have been the Femern tunnel. So we took some of their material that were public available, and then we put classification codes, for instance, for spaces and for construction elements, and we also tried to show they have a road accident control method, also consisting of different construction elements. We also there took and put the classification codes for construction elements and spaces on that, in order to show also that even if you call emergency lighting and power something, you can still classify them in a generic way. And so in principle, if you use the code that has a definition behind it, you can actually call it specific things and still have this core classification functionality. And that was, I think, was also one of the things that convinced them in getting into this project. The latest, for 2.5 years ago, and I show this just to say that implementation takes time, so don't worry about that. 2.5 years ago, we made some learning program for the Danish Ministry of Defense, the state agency. And of course, they have a lot of relationships to their business purposes, what they're going to be able to perform, the maintenance situation about all their facilities, and the software that they have on a higher level. All these things should be considered, but now they are in the process of actually classifying their buildings, their facilities, for management operations, for planning and for budgeting. So, and the latest, only last week, I was told that they, of course, also found some missing object class in the construction entities and construction complexes table, and they will propose these to Molio. And we do the same with the BIM infrastructure. We asked them to put up their proposals. I think we got a lot of nice proposals, both for the existing classes, how to interpret and use them for infrastructure, but also for new important additions to have that we will discuss in this collaboration group in the CCIC. And when we agree upon this in CCIC, we can carry it into the standards when they are being revised. I talked about properties. Molio has established now, within the last 2 months, something called Lexicon. It's a database we have for properties and related concepts, and we have imported the CCI classification as a classification concept into the data dictionary. We have assigned the CCI classification to a data template, and we have imported the whole classification structure into that database. In that way, we are able to relate properties to the object classes. We can use the CCI classification and in the identification for the properties in the data dictionary to provide standardized properties for the use of CCI classification systems. So that's about CCI type ID property. It's about CCI properties. And that we do in a collaboration with the Norwegian company CoBuilder. And at this moment, we, by this database, support 4 purposes. The one is we support the Danish LOD standard, that you could also call level of information need. We use it for specifying construction elements, and also on top of that, we specify information delivery for construction elements in the models. Classification and identification is, of course, a purpose and supported by this database, and environmental product declaration will also be supported, and operation and maintenance properties will be supported as well. So up till now, we have around 150 properties and approximately 40 data templates defined. This is, for our point of view, taking this common language to the next level, that to make it operational for software and for users in the different areas. A short overview, you can see here, this is the view into the database, the fields of the database. We have data templates on top, and we have properties below. We have a steel beam data template here, for instance, supported by digital design level LOI 400. We have the classification and entity mappings, both the IFC and the CCI, and we also have the CCS. We have the IFC entity, and we have the related, one of the related properties, for instance, is the load bearing to that one, and so we can also make these property and parameter mappings. So all these things go together in this database. I think that's where we are reached at the moment, and we're happy that these things now come together. So again, as Jaroslav also said, it's very much about getting the CCI that are standards-based to work with all the other standards that are produced in BIM standardization. Yeah, it's near Christmas. I have one slide that's not about CCI in use, but maybe in perspective. So a little Christmas present maybe, if I can use the time.
Sure.
All right. I would say something about the 19650 standards here, especially part 1, 2, and 3. They are now being mentioned as some of the top standards in being a part of the European BIM standardization, and it's also the international standardization. And 1, 2, and 3 talks about information management in general on a very top level, but they also talk more about the information model and the information standard. The standard does not explain what that is, but says it's up to the client to define that. And how does a client define an information standard? It's something about requirements, it's something about specifying information need, but it's also something about what the standard also talks about, to have a well-defined breakdown structure, and that's important for being able to specify and create exchange information requirements. And that was what CCI is very much about. CCI fits perfectly into this, both the information standard, the structure, with the RDS principle, reference designation system principle, and it's perfect for creating that information model. You can actually model, now I only showed the typical geometrical model, but you can actually model, for instance, here is shown in 4 aspects, the information structure tree using the CCI to do that. And when you do that, you're also able to relate these things to each other, so you know how to fill, as the Slovakian president said before, this is something about filtering. This is something about making the access to information more operable and interoperable than just having the model. These things go very well together. If the software vendors for geometrical models see this and think about this, they could actually, for the geometrical model, be able, through the IFC, to specify that structure for the model as far as it goes. Then specification, calculation, diagrams, whatever else you have for maintenance and operation and products can be added to that information into that information structure tree, and you can see it in all those different aspects. You could maybe even have a sustainability aspect. We haven't tried it yet. So there are many ways into that. So I think this is somehow a part of the road to getting the digital twin together with all the technological development also going on at the same time. So thank you for attending, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you, Gunnar. A good presentation as always. Do we have any questions in the room right away? Not in the physical room. I have a question from the online audience.
Yeah.
Ralph is asking, can you explain the Molio lexicon versus define product data standard?
Whoa, I think we need to hand over the mic to Søren here.
Get Søren here on the stage as well. So question.
Yeah, well, it's basically pretty simple because lexicon is a subset of define. The idea is to have national or regional context in define, and the Danish context is called lexicon and published by Molio, but it's a subset and it is interoperable with all the other subsets of define. So some concepts are shared with, example, what's going on in Czechia, the Czech Republic, and other things are specific to Denmark and only a part of lexicon because it's a part of Danish practices and standards.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Ralph. Any other questions? Yes. There is a comment based on experience of using the coding system for a few years now from Elia, but I don't see the comment itself. Elia, maybe you can write in the chat a little bit more about it. And we can then maybe discuss it later in the discussion panel as well. But thank you, Gunnar, again for the presentation.
Yeah,
and we will move forward. So next up, I think we have, yes, Swedish presenter. So Andreas is coming from all the way from Sweden here, and I'm getting your presentation ready. And you're going to talk to us about CodeClass, right?
Yes.
And how you are using it there. Wait, let me just quickly make it easier for you. I'll switch off some presentations so you have maybe a presentation mode as well. Okay, well, no presentation mode, but I hope this works for you as well. Okay, so you
will be perfect.
Okay, so you can use the hand mic.
Yeah, I will use both, okay. I think. I will start with trying to explain the landlord's perspective in this world we are living in, and how we will reconfigure our business into the digital context. I will do that in 3 approaches. The understanding where we are and what the future holds, the making choices and developing a strategy roadmap, and making it all happen, turning ideas and plans into reality. This is the why, the what, and the how, practically. My name is Andreas Persson. I'm head of the expert support unit. I have a master's degree in architecture. I have a master's degree in science about informatics, digital business development, roughly 25 years of experience from both the private sector and the public sector, mostly the public sector. I work at Familjebostäder. It's a public real estate company founded in 1936 and owned by the municipality of Stockholm. Our mission is to build, own, and manage block of flats for the needs of Stockholm's residents. And now I will start with the elephant in the room, the elephant of the real estate digital technology. And what is it? It could be a fan, a spear, a snake, a tree, or maybe a rope. I would say that I can't go into detail on every slide, but I think the CCIC will distribute this afterwards.
Yeah.
The elephant. What you see depends on what you were thinking about when you started to look, and what you see is what you get. So you can either spy the system, which you can engineer, or you can spy complexity and confusion, that you can organize exploration of as a learning system. The first view relates to hard system thinkers, and the second view to soft system thinking. So what do I see? I see or spy complexity and confusion. When I talk about digital technology, I talk both about think technology and idea technology. And the key concept I see in think technology is to start with the customer experience and work yourself back to the technology. And the idea technology key concept is the ability to take data, to understand it, to process it, to extract value from it, to visualize it and communicate it. So it's both about experience and logistics. I will send you some state of mind statements about this. The thing is that Volvo provides cars just as little as IKEA provides furniture, because car manufacturers are in the transportation experience business, and home retail is about logistics, if you look at those two companies. And the real estate business are kind of both. And in my point of view, the construction and real estate businesses are not yet reconfigured into the digital context. Because analog information are closely linked to the underlying media and relates to a hard system thinking. And the digital information which we are going into are separated from the underlying media and relates to soft system thinking. And we must talk about the context. I'm working and living in Sweden, where the complexity and confusion is big. We are all in this room and perhaps online part of Europe, but we are also part of the world. To make this work, we have to use languages, which is one of the founding principles in Europe with multilingualism. So, at EU, we have institution for translations, and that is to ensure that the laws passed by the EU will be understood by people and businesses, and of course the courts that have enforced them. And to do that, we have to use computer assistant translation. And when we talk about the context in Europe, we also have the single market. So that we can enabling people, services and goods and capital to move more freely and offering opportunities for this. One of the important thing to boost for the Commission is public procurement. And when you talk about trade, in my point of view, you must have three things in order to make this trade work, and it's language, infrastructure, and security. So, back to the hard system thinking. We started a while ago without computers, so the documents were interesting. And then we got the computers, and the computers went interesting. And now we're back with the computers and the documents are interesting. EA, the PDFs, the Word files, the Excel files. But when you think about this, and with a reference to tools, you can make it more efficient in two ways, by improving the tool or substituting it with a better. But with regards to any given tool, it must be noted that there is a point beyond where it cannot be improved. So that leaves us to the situation we have today, when we had to go on with the soft system thinking. Because it's not the documents that's interesting, it's the things they are about. But the main obstacle is not the technology, it's us, the humans, and the resistance to change. I think we already have the technology, but to go forward, you have to change your mind about how to use the technology. Because there's nothing more difficult to plan, no more doubtful to success, no more dangerous to manage than the creation of a new system. For the initiator has the end mighty of all who would profit from the preservation of the old system. So change management is very important in this transformation or reconfiguration. So one question there is, do you start bottom up, or do you go top down, or do you do both? We have different examples from Estonia, from Sweden, and Denmark, and so on. So that's a question too. So how do you digest the digital elephant of real estate? In my point of view, I would say by idea technology. And triangulate the context with the digital and eat it bit by bit. We have started with the language, but we are also looking at infrastructure and security at the same time. Security is something I don't have even heard of today in the former speakers, but it's a very large area to take in consideration in this part. Our approach is to take the soft and the hard triangles of trade. If the old way to do it, which we are experts in, are the hard triangle of trade, you have to think that the soft triangle of trade is in the core of the hard. So you have to make them work together, and you have to make them meet the circle of communication. If you take a classification system to classify the concept, you can do it. You can define the concept with properties and attributes. And when you have the concept and the definition of it, you use the term we use as a linguistic expression. In Sweden, we call it tvättmaskin, which is a washing machine, but the concept in co-class is AKA 10. So that defines the concept. And in all of your languages, you have another term, which is a synonym to the Swedish term. So I think it won't be enough for us in Sweden to have co-class as a kind of translator to these terms. We have to make this a common translator in Europe, at least. And it should be free, I think. Free to use. And then we can have a secure European soft infrastructure also. And our work, we have taken the co-class structure, which is the same as I've seen in CCI or CCS, and we have connected it to our mission and the regulatory laws we have in Sweden. And the mission is still the same as 1936, to build, own and manage block of flats for the needs of Stockholm's residents. It hasn't changed. We are connecting it to the primary law we have in Sweden, which is the land code for our business. The jordabalk, it's from the 1970s, also not new, but you can connect it to this structure. And this structure can work as a container for information for the requirements. We do this with a layered architecture real estate, which is the objective of construction. You have the contents layer and the service layers containing the stakeholders, and you have the network layer and the device layer, which is the systems. So in the bottom layer, the device layer, you have the classification system. And what do we do with this? We have continued with the device layer, which is central to our industry and also to our lives, the built environment. So we are in the process of classifying all our built environment in the company. And the main reason for that at the first step is to make a good requirement thing to put out on the market in procurement. So we take the classification with the building constructional complex and the constructional entity and divide it into two systems, one basic system and one customer system. And the basic system consists of the space creating systems and the installation system. And the customer system consists of the equipment, the fit-out systems, and the space systems. And as you see on the bottom line, we can connect it to the building process or the building plan for the contractor. And they in turn can use the classification to procure subcontractors. And this is the same procedure as with the building or with outside the building. It's the same structure. So when you have done this and you have taken it apart to different actors, you can feed the system, which is the European single market. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Andreas. That's quite a lot of information in a very short time. But I understand, how long have you been working with CoClass now? Developing this?
We have been working together with Svensk Byggtjänst to build up how we are seeing this apartment buildings, this block of flats. Mm-hmm. So we have given them the structure for that type of building. So that is out in their AMA Function Studio, the tool they have, so you can build. So that's that structure that's in that tool comes from us, providing it to the market. So, but you have to make properties and attributes to it, but the structure is there.
So essentially, you're using CoClass to describe your requirements for your assets, and procuring those assets.
In the first step, for kind of a requirement database, but we're of course thinking of how to take it into the asset and perhaps an asset database in the long run.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Klaas has commented that. It's on another comment beforehand, so this wasn't a comment to you, but we'll maybe address it later on in the discussion panel. Do we have any questions from the audience here? No, not at the moment. But
I think when you hand out the PDF of the presentation, it won't be.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the fonts. My computer.
Jumping, all the words are jumping in the presentation, but not in the PDF.
yeah. We will distribute later the presentations in proper format.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to ask. One thing is setting the requirements, but are you also then, when, for example, you are building a new house, it is delivered, are you also checking against those very first requirements you set?
Yeah. So you have the functional requirements from us, the clients, and the contractor have to match the functional requirements with the technical description. So we have the functional description, and they must match it with the technical. And the common bit is the properties and the attributes. They must match. So we are controlling all the process.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be delivering the structure from the beginning to all consultants and contractors. And we will have it back in the same way.
Have you already started a project using this method?
We have a pilot that's going on for the time being, a small refurbishment project. But as I said, you can't deny the impact of security. We have had a lot of security problems with this cloud thing as a public procurer.
Okay. Well, very interested to see how this pilot turns out, and hope we will hear from you again.
Yeah.
But thank you again,
Thank you.
Andres, for coming here.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have a slight change in the initial plan, because we have an additional presentation that wasn't in the first initial agenda. Let me just quickly, and this presentation is coming again from Czechia. So we have Irji here, and he's going to talk to about how CCI is being used. It's no longer about the theory, but CCI in use, examples and testing. So Irji, please, can you come on the stage so we can start with your presentation. Go ahead. Yeah, just use the mic.
Thank you for that possibilities. I am here behalf on Czech Standardization Agency, and now let's say we will go a little bit deeper into the system, and maybe the picture will not be so nice, but it's the real life as we test it. So because my, let's say, home field is the infrastructure, which is focused mostly into the roads. So I'll start to describe you some pilots and testing of using CCI in, let's say, in the basis, which means just on the classification level, and both on the whole possibilities of reference designation. So thanks to the fact how the whole system is structured and how many rules are affected the using of the system, we split it into many steps, many projects. And let's say the first one, which you can see, was the road project, which were focused on solving the problem how to manage, how to work with CCI classes, which are, let's say, mostly designed for the house construction projects in the infrastructure. In that case, we used the possibilities which are offered by using of 81346 series, and we used there the RDS principles, which were focused into used type and product aspects, which were connected with different construction part of the projects and so on. In the end, when the project was finished, we had to find out also some tools and add-ons how to automatize how to make our works, let's say, a little bit better, a little bit more automatized, and so on. So we wrote some own scripts and some special export-import tools. And yep, it seems that it was working, and even one of the use case which came out from this way of solution of the problem was the better connection between the construction parts and, for example, the budgeting and cost and let's say cost items and so on. In the same time, with another groups of colleagues, we went similarly way of construction, but it was just used on CCI itself. That means we use there just the classification, which is based on the CCI tables. In this case, was at the end of the experiment was shown that it's also possible to use, and it has its own result, let's say, and in the end, one of the most visible output of this experiment was fast and easy filtering of the project itself, and all, let's say, the filtering and using of the outputs were also connected with data templates, how they are produced, but by Czech road authorities, specific use, specific needs. So when was the project filled out by CCI class? So it was possible to use and go through the functional technical system and use all the systematic view of the project itself. What it can be also interesting that as well as in house construction project where the let's say software vendors or software resellers created some tools which helping to the users. We try to do something ourselves for different environment, as I mentioned before, Autodesk, and this is also the environment for Bentley. And we find out a way that it's possible to use some internal configuration and write down the connection in between the layer management and the classes itself and so on, and the result was exactly the same. It was helping at least to faster go through the project and take out some functional system and so on. As well, before the add-on which were presented were created, it was also necessary to test it on the house construction project which were created in Autodesk Revit tool, and there were also used classification itself, but it was, let's say, more for educational purposes. So that means it was there used not only presenting class and itself by the codes, but even it was used there the preferred name of the class and the class definition, because thanks the educational reason. In the same time were chosen another project, and they were tested for works with built spaces in the connection to RDS, and it was some possibility, or it was some testing how to fit it, how to get it work when it will be fit with existing legal rules and local professional customs, because as I guess all of you knows, one of the biggest problem of implementing CCI into practice is, let's say, habits and customs and legal rules which were creating more than 40-50 years ago, or it depends on our country where we came from. So sometimes it's easier than to fight with all others, is to try to find out the way how to combine it, and this way is games from 8.13.46 part 12, and that part offer us how to solve this, how to work it together. But what is the best example, which I think is the example which has been done with cooperation with colleagues from Prague Airport, and this means fully apply of automatization, fully apply of CCI and RDS principes for their utilities management, and even is continue like to some procurement of some renovation process on building which are part of the airport. And all all of that results into two specific uses of CCI with RDS principles. Like one is for evidentiation of utilities on the airfield, and the second one is, let's say, for the fast checking on budget when they have to run some procurement and the first stage of the project. Basically, all this has been created based on as-built documentation or some newly collected data on all utility system which they have, and the logic is built like is described in this schema, because this diagram came originally from 120.06 and it's part 2, and it's the base for the tables of CCI. And let's say when it was connected with the existing logic of the project, it was understood like that the table of construction entities were used for project itself. In the field of airport, it means that the entities are the utilities itself, are runways, are houses, and etc. In the case of build space, it was used for room, spaces, zones, area, parking. So it means rooms which were connected really with the physical rooms within the houses. Spaces was some specific spaces like some fire affected or explosives or whatever you need to handle on the airfield. As well zones, areas, the same as well parking, because all of these possibilities are suggested but by using of build space table of CCI. And then what was also important in the case of utilities was the using of functional technical system and components, because it was possible to use the whole logic of 8.13.46, that means system thinking, what is an ID, how to split out the outer world around us into some, let's say, systems which belongs together by their function, by their use, and then by the elements which the systems are built from. So yep, this seems to be very, very useful. But when the implementation went forward, it was also discovered that it's really important to be in, let's say, almost daily touch with some special profession which belongs to each project, and it's also important to prepare for them some educational material. And the educational material, it was inspired by the materials which has been done by colleagues in Denmark and even in Sweden. And it's, let's say, some example which is built on some local professional rules, and it shows which profession should mostly used, or which profession mostly used which system, functional, technical, spaces, etc. And what is most important, and many of presentation before mentioned that, really important is to force somehow or profession in construction project to define their terms by a specific definition and the source of the definition, to fully use the possibilities of the ontology to make the proper mapping and the proper classification of all their specific words. After that, we can use all the possibilities and all the outcomes from using of CCI, like the common language. And as well, similarly has been tested as I mentioned before, on the renovation project where I use classification and RDS for checking the budget within the procurement. Here is little bit examples from another point of view. So the first examples of the pilots games, let's say, from private and, in the case of airfield, public companies, but still the companies who is taking care about real stuff, real things, like, as I mentioned, airfield, roads, etc., the things which are used. Now we will move forward into the governmental task, and let's say the things which staying between those tasks is the ontology, as I mentioned before, and for the ontology purposes we are using some special system which were presented yesterday on our CC, and that's the system which can help us to care about CCI itself in Czech condition, and even is a system which can help us to build up some vocabularies and with the terms definition and so on for some specific profession. So, and little bit of example how it was suggested how was suggested the use of CCI for some governmental use. If it will be accepted or not, it's another question. This is just some suggestion. Here, in the case of Czech condition of regional development, in the case of possible digital building permit, if something will be, is the using of the table construction entities and its connection to the built environment. Here, as you can see, it was worked before with, let's say, the version of table of construction entities which were in 3 level of classes. Nowadays, thanks the standardization, it's just on 2 level of classes. But anyway, it's not any big deal because it's just about the granularity of the system. Also, it was done some communication with Czech Statistical Office. That means it's some mapping between our well-known classification system which came from UNCC, and as most of you know, this classification system up to 4th level is based on some international item list, but the level below are just local add-ons. But anyway, when we try to match it with CCI entities table, it was also possible to run it, and as is it's not so well seen, okay, but the result of the test that when we are mapped up to the international, that means 4th level of CC, it was enough just to use 2 level of CCI entities table. So anyway, it's matching together also after this, let's say, this update of entities table. We did similar task within the project which is running. That means digital technical map. Many of you are also using and running similar project, and it was shown that in this technical map, especially in the point of view technical infrastructure, like some, as I mentioned before, utilities, pipelines, power lines, and so on, was really helpful to use both functional and technical system to sort out the information and to keep the information, let's say, more clear and easier to work. In this case, I have to mention it was also just the testing project, and it was some suggestion. It's not official accepted yet. As well was the similar experiment which were based on construction entities table and in the regional planning, because nowadays, according our Czech local rules, it's not standardized in the whole Republic how to handle the spaces within regional planning. Basically, all local agency can do it our local governmental agency can do it as they want, because it's no specification. Its specification is just written, and if will be any wish, so it's possible also to apply CCI like the standard how to handle the places within regional planning. And what is going forward, and where is even interest from governmental side, is using the mapping in between entities and CC classification for use of governmental tax office for the purpose of getting some better standardized list of way how to work with real estate pricing for tax purposes. So this was just, I hope it was fast. It was fast and shortcut done review of the pilots, which we try to do. And like the conclusion of the pilots is the fact that CCI itself, according our pilot projects, seems to be really well done and possible to use. And what is and where is the most problematic point is based again on the ontology, on the fact that even the people within one nation who is using one language, so even in that case people cannot understand each other. So when it's really necessary to use one common language, thanks the classification design on international standard of the series 12006, and then explain in 81346. So thank you for attendance.
Thank you, Irji. Lots of great examples of how you're already using, but these are pilots or tests mostly,
Exactly, yeah? Exactly. All of them are pilots. And the most advanced pilot, which came from Airfield and road design company, has been done by the personal interest of the people who works on them.
Okay. But are there any plans for any companies to really implement it in their daily work already?
Not yet, because all the companies are based on the people, and as many of you before used that change management, the changes is the hardest things. So according my opinion and the information which I got from the people who tested is that the people who did it will continue with new pilots, and they are continue. And let's say most advanced, I have to say again, are on the airfield, because if I understood correctly, there should be done some internal decision that they will spread this way through more and more parts of their airfield complex, and they will, or if I understood correctly, they should apply it in more wider space. But I have to say, at least in the governmental offices, at least the statistic and finance tax office, they are also willing to continue on some higher level than the pilot.
Okay. Well, this statistical thing is definitely something we're also looking at, because it's in every European country we have to provide the same data for Eurostat. Okay, I'm checking if there's any questions for you, Irji, on the Zoom chat. There's quite an interesting discussion going on between Klaas and Elia, but we might have a a sneak peek at that later on. But thank you again, Irji.
Thank you.
And now to our last presentation of today. I would like to invite here on stage Mindaugas. Yeah, there you are, already getting up. I'll get your slides ready. And I understand you're not a classification expert
No.
per se,
No.
but you're going to talk to us about the new agency in Lithuania is doing, and what's your kind of BIM strategy, right?
Yeah, I will talk a short overview of what are we doing with this project.
Okay. Either take the mic higher or use this one, tall guy.
Yeah.
Okay, take it away.
So, hello everyone. I'm Mindaugas Kirejevas. I represent the Lithuanian Construction Development Agency. Our mission is to help digitalize Lithuania's construction sector, to make some improvement in this area. We have initiative of BIM methodology implementation in Lithuania. It started several years ago. It was initiated by Ministry of Environment of Lithuania. And this year, the project was handed over to Construction Development Agency, and we continue to implement this BIM-LT project. And our main strategy point is to improve the efficiency of construction sector. And main measures were chosen to make this goal true. We are working through different standards, guidelines, preparing recommendations for the public sector. And we are reviewing all legislation related with construction processes, with procurement, and etc. We also are developing a national construction classifier based on CCI. We had discussions several years ago about classification, what classification to choose, and there was strategical decision to choose CCI as the basis for national construction classifier. In the last stages of project, there is planned education, training of public procurement, public organizations, how to use this BIM methodology. And last but not least, we are developing a KPI system to monitor our implementation process and to see how it works and make some decisions. It is very important to mention this BIM-LT project is supported by local national government, and there were made some legislation changes to procurement process to make BIM methodology mandatory for public procurements. And also we have a resolution on requirements and the criteria for the application of building information modeling methods, and also order of the ministry for employer or exchange information requirements usage in construction projects. We implement this approach in iterations, incrementally, and there is legislation to use BIM methodology as mandatory in projects with greater or even to the specific budgets of the projects. And at this day, there is for buildings 5 million euros, and for engineering structures 10 million euros. And starting from 2024, this threshold will be lowered. It will be, as far as I remember, 5 millions and 3 millions respectively. And starting from 2026, it even will be lowered. So this is the main message to save time for my colleague Darius Pupeikis, who will represent the national construction classifier we are working on currently. Thanks.
You. Thank you, Mindaugas. We have Darius joining us online.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, I am Darius Pupeikis. I am representative of Kaunas University of Technology, and I'm going to extend Mindaugas' presentation and talk a bit more about technical stuff, what is related with National Construction Information Classification System in Lithuania. We call it shortly NCIC, and I'm going to use this, let's say, short term. Currently, it's probably worth to say that currently this development of National Construction Classification System, it's one of the main tasks under the umbrella of BIM-LT project, which aims to develop of BIM methodology in Lithuania. And in more than half year, we are going to have final results of this project. That's why it's quite important, you know, to move quite intensively to some final results. Probably you are familiar with standard 12006 part 2, which talks about framework for international classification system, and this is a general schema. And I would like to talk more from strategical perspective about NCIC general schema in the same form as according to the standard 12006 part 2. And if we talk about classes and some specific, let's say, starting from the top, you know, the most, I would say, the most significant, maybe it's a construction result. And what we have in our classification system adapted from CCI, it's one of the most probably important ontologies related with elements. It means functional classes, functional systems, technical systems, and components. And what concerns entities and complexes, unfortunately, we adapted this from, let's say, maybe inherited this from our existing national construction classification systems under the legal rules and environment, because they are quite, you know, interrelated with general construction law and other legal rules. Spaces, we adapted spaces from CCI, and we are happy to have, you know, to be on board with international colleagues. What concerns processes, we are going to develop and to create some stages. What concerns construction life cycle, maybe building life cycle, that means planning, design, construction, use and maintenance, something like that. One more ontology related with construction works. I know that it could be quite, you know, deep topic, and we could work quite intensively what concerns construction works, because it could be quite, you know, sensitively related with with cost estimation use case. But in our, let's say, our approach is just to adapt what it is under the existing legal rules and acts. There are some, let's say, few levels of classification system, and we just try to adapt to create a coding system according to the ISO 81346 standard rules. Okay, and construction resources. What concerns construction resources, we adapted mainly here from existing national legal rules, what's related with agents. Agents and various, roles and actors are strictly regulated under the general construction law. Then we have part of construction information, and there are some, let's say, quite popular in industry, let's say, classification maybe, or in our case, it's more adapted classification according to the ISO requirements. It is related with design disciplines. We call it project parts in our language, but it's in English probably it's a better term. It's disciplines. There are some more information about design types, what is quite related with, let's say, with some processes in life cycle of building, with construction permission and things like that, with procurement as well. One more, let's say, part of this ontology, it's construction categories. There are no many of these categories, but they are quite important if we're looking from, let's say, from a legal perspective. That's why it is here. One more thing, what we just indicated that it's quite important, to have, as well, could be quite deep topic, what is related with construction documents. We just want to have, some common popular construction documents used for naming convention. That's why we choose this as a part of NSIC, and we are trying, to develop this. Maybe not too deeply, because it could be based on ISO standards, what is quite detailed, approach, but in this case, our approach, it's more focused on to national perspectives. And finally, construction types. That means mainly, let's say, bottom part, it's inherited from Lithuanian legal rules and adapted according to the ISO 81346 and CCI standard, and inherited from CCI, what concerns elements, spaces, and related with construction results. This is the maybe short general description what we are developing currently in Lithuania, and what is related with construction information classification system. But it's probably worth to mention here that this classification system talks and shows information related with construction. There are many other construction classification system, usually old classification system, and we have some data already created according to those old classification system, but usually what we call them, they are like a sector classification system, maybe related with registry of buildings, with assets, maybe related with GIS and with geology and things like that. That means our core, it's a construction information, and somewhere around there are probably some sector based classification system, and some interrelation are quite obvious in this case, because built environment, it's very broad, and it's very implemented in our world. That means we can't avoid, and say this is construction information and there are no interrelation with other sectors and other industries, let's say. It is very important to understand because usually industry people and some actors usually likes to map all world, to make mappings of all stuff, what is with all existing and material stuff. It's probably not possible. That means we have, to have achievable results and strategic, goals, what we are trying to achieve. That's why it's our approach, to start to kick off from international standards. It's ISO 81346, it's ISO 12006, part 2, it's CCI, and of course we have history and we can't, to reject all what we have been developing, 20 years. It's a reality, and as you can see, all these ontologies are bounded with properties. We are not developing properties, but we just developing maybe some common templates, how to use properties, how to set, how to describe and define it, how to relate it with some let's say NSIC classes and objects. But properties, it's a probably more wider topic, and colleagues discussed about data templates and things like that. Yeah, it's probably it's for the future. Looking from our perspective, but it's definitely will be quite significant more and more, I would say. Okay, this is a basic, schema, general schema of what concerns our NSIC. Currently, we are work in progress. Probably it's not very beneficial to show some, examples of ontologies in our national language, but maybe it's good to look in some application cases. What is more maybe recognizable for you. We are piloting definitely, and NSIC application probably we can even split into several probably parts, because it has quite sensitive dependence from a software, and software packages are quite wide variety of these software packages. That's why we have different challenges in this case. Shortly speaking, classification is just the creation of attributes. We have an object, we just attach an attribute to this object, we just name it according to the classification system. We have to maintain and hold some common standardized attribute names. Definitely attribute values. It's classes. That's a shortly speaking, and you can see some examples from heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems system of a particular building. Or one more example. You can't, what is quite, important to highlight here, that you can't understand probably what is written here, but you can understand what is written here. It is, it shows that it could be a common language, and regardless the national context, that's why it's quite good. Yeah, some examples what concerns structures. Here we have water supply and sewerage system. Yeah, some examples. Yeah, functional system, technical system component, more application pilot cases, what concerns naming convention. It is usually related with common data environment. And we are developing as well for our BIMLT partners, one of the most significant clients in construction industry, responsible for roads and buildings, you know. Here is an example. It's not some kind of rules, but it's an example how we can name and how we can agree on common naming convention and how we can actually use NSIC classification system in naming convention as well. We can add some additional, let's say, custom attributes maybe where it is written. And it is definitely it is quite important for directories, files, subdirectories, you know, to create some common structure, and we can use it codes. You know, it is shorts are good because they are short, but maybe it's not, you know, user friendly because you don't have an attribute name in naming convention. You don't have such a possibility. If you use some advanced common data environment tools, yeah, you can create, you know, some metadata where you can put some attribute name. It is very useful. It is good, but anyway, you have to name it somehow. The directories, the subdirectories, the files. That's why some common templates and standardized templates in common data environment, it is very useful, and classification system here acts quite significant role. A bit more challenging, you know, environment. It's a CAD-based environment and software. I know that it is, you know, we can shout that it is not BIM, you know, why we are talking about CAD, but the reality is that if we are talking about, you know, composition of BIM model, some design disciplines are nowadays quite, you know, it's quite, you know, hard to imagine how it could be, you know, realized and how it could be developed in some specific software tool. That's why, and there are, of course, quite many. There are many actors which are not advanced. Maybe they can't buy, you know, some BIM software, and maybe some information systems are not adapted to BIM-based formats and files and things like that. That's why, you know, in some let's say intermediate period, we definitely have some DVGs and CAD-based file formats and data. That's why we have tried to look for some approaches how we can use classification system in CAD-based software, and definitely there are some cases. One of the most, I would say, old school method, it could be when we put codes into layer naming, you know. Probably it's quite, you know, there are even standards for this case if we look for that. But we have tried to use, you know, classification system and create some methodology, a bit, you know, maybe not a bit similar to naming convention methodology, because when we're talking about layer naming, you know, it's a bit similar like file naming, because you don't have an ability to write an attribute name, you don't have an ability to use some specific symbols. That means you don't have an ability to use full of NSIC, you know, capabilities. We know that, but it's you know, it's just we have to agree that it's a, you know, old school method, and there are some limits and constraints in this case. Yeah, but mainly you could create some some components of naming, you know, by separating it, dividing it into some parts. And these parts could be related with, let's say, classification system codes or even other classification system code. And it is quite, you know, good, you know, case. Then you can use it. For example, if you have construction information in the environment of GIS, you know, and for GIS you have one classification system, and for, let's say, some building or construction or structure, you can use another classification system. In this case, definitely you have to define the what we call meta structure, metadata, how you are going, you know, how you are going to translate, for example, this code, you know. It's you know, it's described in human language. This one is described in computer language. But yeah, you have to have metadata part, because you have to talk data. You have to create data about data here. It's a one case. Of course, we can talk about more advanced case. You can block elements, and this one, it's more, you know, BIM-based approach, because you have an object in this case. Usually in CAD-based software, you have an, you know, lines and points and circles. There are no, you know, limits of beginning and end of particular object. It's a big, you know, problem, I would say, and different concept. Definitely, it's very, I would say, wrong meaning, you know, wrong concept. But you can block, of course, it costs, it takes resources, and attach some attributes into block, or use some more advanced tools, CAD-based tools, or add-ins or add-ons for attributing. For example, if you use Civil 3D, maybe it's more, I would say it's more software, it's more similar to BIM-based software than to CAD software. Despite that, it's, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just wanted to quietly ask you to maybe wrap it up as soon as possible, because we're running out of time here.
Okay, yeah. Everything is okay. Okay, yeah, that's shortly about application in CAD. Maybe I'm not going into details, because, you know, this technical stuff, maybe for someone it's too boring. If you have some particular questions, I would be happy, you know, to answer it if I can.
Okay,
that's
thank you, Darius.
Wrap up.
I didn't mean you have to wrap up in like 2 seconds, but that was very good. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience to Darius? Let me check on Zoom. I don't think we have any specific questions for you. But Darius, I mean, this system is now you're piloting, you're testing it, or is it already ready for mass use in the industry?
It's not ready. We are waiting for, let's say, final day of this project, and probably we have to announce, you know, final results. Of course, the current maturity, maybe not for all of ontologies, but for majority of ontologies, are quite, you know, enough to use it, I would say. But it's not final version. It's draft version at the moment.
When do you expect to have kind of the final version that you can use?
I hope in the end of next year.
Yeah, and there's one question from class, actually. Yeah, thank you, Leonas, for directing me to the question. Class was asking if you can give examples of construction categories.
Yes, construction categories are mainly for this one. There are, okay, I have to translate it to English. There are, you know, in Lithuania, there are 3 construction categories in second level. In the first level, let's see, 3 construction categories, but last category is divided into 2 parts. First, it's a, let's say, most significant category. Another one, it's let's say like a average significance category, and final, it's let's say it's the most useless, let's say, category or something like that, you know. But yeah, there are 3 categories, and according to those categories, there are some specific requirements adapted according to national regulation. You know, if you have, you know, one or another category, that means your design, construction permission, even construction handover processes could differ. That's why it's not a broad ontology. It's probably, you know, a couple of classes only, but from a, let's say, legal perspective, it is quite significant in our environment, let's say.
Okay. I hope, Klaus, you got your answer from that. So I don't see any further questions for you, Darius. So thank you again for joining us online and explaining NSIC to us. And now I would like to actually use the opportunity to, since Lithuania is developing their classification system based on CCI classification system. Oh, look, I'm on a double screen here. Maybe I can just shut this off because we don't need it on screen, I think. Most of our discussions have now are over. We're a bit out of time, but I would like to take this opportunity to actually ceremonially sign the CCIC application form from Lithuania. So Mindaugas, can you come here? And I have your membership application form. And we can then, you know, like I have all the flags here nicely set up. So we can officially welcome you to the CCIC club. So here's everything filled out. So maybe just add your signature here as well next to Idas's signature. Yeah, on that line. And I will, on behalf of the CCIC Board of Trustees, can sign my side. And yes, welcome to CCIC. It's unfortunate Gunnar left before he could witness this, but I was really hoping to show him how it's done. So, yeah, because our Danish friends are officially not yet members of the CCIC, but we're really happy to have our Baltic close, almost neighbors, or the neighbors after a neighbor, with us in this collaboration. So thank you again, Mindaugas, for coming here. So we're already over time. So unfortunately, I don't think we have time to do a discussion panel. And also some people need to rush to the airport, as Gunnar and Soren already did. There was an interesting discussion between Klaus and Elias on Zoom chat about Elias was pointing out that you can't use a design classification for everything. And she was specifically talking about costing, cost measurement, and about the fact that in the BIM model you cannot have all the information. Some of the information is coming outside of the model. And you know, it's something we can discuss. And if we still have a few minutes, maybe I would still invite Raido, Jaroslav, and Ella to join me here on stage, because I know we're out of time, but I can't resist. I still want to have a small discussion panel. Yeah, just let's put 3 chairs here for you guys. And we have a microphone here. Raido, you can sit here. I will stand. Yeah. And what would you comment on this topic of classification, design classification not covering all the needs, and not all the information fits into the model or the design documentation. Yaroslav.
Of course, we need to split the answer into two things. One, the reality, December 2022, and what is the aim? Yeah, because right now we cannot really put all the structured information into the models. That's the reality. The software doesn't support it. We didn't know the knowledge. Yeah, that's the fact. We have to respect that. But on the other hand, we heard it today. One interesting thing, how we are doing the same thing. Yeah, I was speaking generally. If I do back in time, I said data dictionary. Follow up by the writer, he said CCI./EE. After that, I came in Czech position, I said DSS. After that came Gunnar and said lexicon. All the things are the same one. Data dictionary is the general name, and those three acronyms are the application of that. And the solution, for example, for the estimation is the purpose by the Loin principle, one of the principles. And their requirements, so they have need for some kind of the information to do the estimating, to calculating the price. And those information should be part of the data dictionary as the properties in the specific milestone, because I can, of course, do the pricing. In the early stages, will have just a little bit of information. I can do later on calculation again. I have much more information because it's more detailed project and so on, so on. So you can see how the purposes and the milestones are related together on the properties and the list of the properties. And there is no classification in that. Yeah, because I just creating the data templates because I need to estimate the price for the windows, for the doors, for the flooring, or whatever. It's not related to the classification. But I have to organize those data templates, and then I can use the classification system. So I need both of the parts for the common digital language to describe all the information for the specific purpose. In this case, it was estimating or calculating prices. So that's how I understand that. So the short answer is that the classification system should really suit the estimating as well for organizing the data, for grouping the data and helping organizing the data templates for the estimator as the experts to put their requirements for the properties into the data templates. So they, in the future, will have all the information inside the model and don't need to take them for any spreadsheets or Word documents or whatever. Yeah, but reality is that it's not working right now. But this is the concept, and we need to go for that step by step moving forward. That's my opinion about it.
So, Raido, what is your opinion?
Almost nothing to add, but I totally agree with Yaroslav. And when it comes to connect the data or additional data, I think that it's a way to go. If you have a classified model, and if you take that information out, you can attach any additional data or data templates to it from other IT systems. I think that everything should not be in one particular model. But as long as it's classified, as long as it's connected to other IT systems, it's really easy to attach. You can't imagine that you have IFC models or whatsoever models with hundreds of properties. We get lost easily in that. So instead of that, if you have a perfectly, let's say, classified model and you attach additional layers through different IT systems, is it the cost estimation? Is it asset management? It's working like that.
Ella? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I absolutely agree with my colleagues, and I would like to add that the main the main benefit from classification system is that we can use it in every file format and we can connect those data. Like my colleague said, it's not necessary to have everything in a model, but the relations between other solutions and between other classifications, between other softwares by the classification codification is just perfect to collect data, compare data from many sectors, not only from construction sector, like our colleague from Lithuania show us how they work together with the how they try to mapping classifications, CCI classification to the some tasks and another sectors, and it is the way to manage and compare and analyze data on new level using this format. And even if we don't even if we don't use the BIM models, the IFC models, using the classification has deep sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So, and I see Ilya is constantly adding more comments to her comments. And she's referring to the fact that you cannot deliver cost breakdown following a design structure. But is CCI a design structure, or is it's not a design structure? It's actually outside of merely having design and using design software.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the benefits of the CCI. It's really covering the whole cycle. It was mentioned by Gunnar. It was mentioned by Jiří in the airport organization. They are mainly using it for the operating and maintenance. So CCI didn't have just the designer logic. They are starting. They are first one of the first actors which are using the CCI inside the outcomes. Yeah, because they are creating the drawings even if in 2D. Yeah, of course, a digital model they are creating. And lots of, and I fully agree with Raido, there are lots of data outside the models. What is very important to, let's say, gently force everybody to creating the structured data outside the models, not creating, let's say, Excel spreadsheets or Word documents or whatever. Yeah, for example, again, budgeting, because that's my previous domain. Yeah, I was involved in that domain for more than 25 years, so I really know how it exactly works. The budget, when you're creating the estimating or calculation, there are lots of data, lots of structured data, which cannot be inside a model, of course, because it's unusable. But again, we need to do the data connection between the classification system. It can be part of it. Yeah, we need slightly more than just classification system, but classification system is very important to organize the data and organize the connection between the data objects inside the digital model, let's say in IFC, and between the items in the budgets. And if they are connected, they can dynamically change, because everybody knows that construction always change, yeah, day by day. Yeah. So even if the aim is to keep up to date the budget and the digital model, you need dynamic connection between the data. And classification system can be one of it, not just only one, but one of it, and very important. And for the people, mostly for the people to understand it. Yeah, because you're always working with the aggregate things, and you need to filtering, because most of all, nobody of us needs to work with everything in one moment. Yeah, one example, when you are going to the supermarket, you never want to know everything. You want to buy things for lunch. So you need to very quickly find the right stack and buy the product. If you put your head up, there is a classification systems in the supermarkets, even in Czech, because I have the signs, there are dairy, there's a meat, there's a vegetable. This is the classification system, nothing else. Yeah, I have to quickly find my row, pick my thing, and get out. Yeah, so that's the example how the classification system can be used for the construction as well.
I think it's really this topic about cost breakdown and budgeting is at the core of what Ilya was also asking. I think you answered it quite well, that it's classification helps to actually do better cost calculations and tracking and reporting throughout the life cycle. But I wanted to ask actually, Andreas, are you also using now CoClass for budgeting as well in your projects? Can I have a mic? Yeah.
We see the potential for that because when we structure our spaces, we can do it once. How does our kitchen look like, our bedrooms, and so forth. And also the installation system and how the other systems too. And we see we can use them in a calculation in a very early stage, before the 3D model and before all the consultants and so on. So we can have a lot of more information in an early stage to do the right calculation, not just for the economics, but for the environmental things too, with the LCA and stuff. So it's all part of our thinking forward.
And I see I think we've now managed to get on the same page with Ilya as well. She totally agrees with us. Same naming and coding for the project elements, different representation, breakdown, and grouping, which may follow different standards, but referring and link to the project elements coding. So it's pretty much, I think, we managed to close the loop on that one. And I know, we're way over time, and I don't want to keep you much longer here, but I have one more question to each of you. We've been talking about CCI as really something that can unite, is a common language, is international, but it doesn't solve everything. And just to be a little bit more realistic, can each of you tell me one thing what CCI is not good for? I know this is counterintuitive, but let's turn the tables and just because we have to be honest. I mean, CCI doesn't solve everything, and just to manage expectations for people who maybe are looking into adopting CCI, what they shouldn't maybe expect from CCI.
One thought is about expectations. Yeah, just expect from the CCI just what it's possible to fill in. Yeah. One of the expectation which is expected from my experience is go more in detail. More in detail. It's not describing the classes at the detail I want to. Yeah, and that cannot be done because if you're trying to do this, you finally finish as the unit class or omni class, lots of wages, lots of levels, and so on and so on. But you always suit just one need, one property, and you lost the whole life cycle. You break it down. So you have to choose one thing. If you want to connect all the life cycle, so I have to stay simple and thin, and I have the chance, or I want to go deep in detail, and after that I have no chance from my experience. And there are different solutions. Of course, I need the information over the detail, but the solution is not classification system. The solution are the properties inside the data templates. Yeah, so that's very important to understand it, and that will be my question. So CCI will not be very good if you want in classification system have specific, very detailed information that you cannot get from the CCI.
Raido, how would you manage expectations, and what maybe you wouldn't expect from CCI?
Actually turn it into a different frame, meaning that we have to look at it in terms of the full life cycle, which means that not everybody from us, if you are asked, or let's say if it's a client requirements that you have to input those CCI codes, you can't see the benefits and you don't understand. But if we put it into the context that, okay, maybe it's not directly useful for you, but it helps to structure the data, and the usefulness is coming out at later stage. So we need to kind of through the, let's say, through the contracts, modern contracts, we should try to teach all those partners or project participants. That's my answer to this.
Thank you, Raido. Ella?
It's a difficult question for me because I'm such enthusiast of this standard, but we are just before to create the ideas for the national part and national part of classification system. And there is a huge expectations from the market, and I'm sure we don't satisfy everybody. And I think I will answer for this question next year when I will know what kind of groups of expectation we didn't satisfy. But at this moment, it's difficult to answer.
Thank you. I'll be fair with you. I'll try to answer myself as well. I think it's CCI is not perfect. No classification system is. It's never going to be finished. It's a constant evolving process. But I think what it is good for, or what we can get benefit from it, is really the bigger picture of being able to link with other stakeholders, with other companies in other countries, because it's international, and therefore making information exchange a bit easier to handle across borders and even across rooms and across streets, because we have already issues in our country, in our markets. So, and that's where the power lies. So if you use it by yourself, you get some benefit, of course. You may structure your data, but the real power comes from if everybody else also starts using it, and you start to realize you can exchange information much more easily in a much more automated way, and we can build tools on top of that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on top of that as well. But I say we call it a wrap. 25 minutes over. Thank you for our panelists, for all of our presenters. And we will put the recording from this public seminar online as well. And hopefully the presentations will also be there. And hopefully it has been interesting for you here and online. And we will surely follow up at some time with some more events and news. So thank you, and have a nice day.